My heart felt like it stopped as Robert's words sank in. My grandmother had spent her life collecting vintage rings, and now they were gone. Sold while I was away for 2 weeks visiting my sick aunt. I got a good price, Robert said, leaning against my bedroom door. Those old things were just sitting there. Better to turn them into real money. I folded a sweater slowly, keeping myself calm. And what did you do with the money, Robert? He shrugged and adjusted his fancy new watch. Invested it. That's what your mother and I do. We make smart choices. Unlike you, holding on to useless sentimental junk. My name is Elizabeth Chen, and at 34, I was watching my stepfather brag about selling the last thing I had left of my grandmother. But what he didn't know was that those rings weren't just family treasures. They were proof. Well, I said, placing another sweater in the drawer. I guess you're right, no point in living in the past. Robert's smug smile faded just a little. He had expected me to be angry, to cry, maybe even scream. But my calm response caught him off guard. Your mother agrees with me, he added, as if trying to justify himself. She says you need to move on. Grace has been gone for 5 years now. Hearing my grandmother's name from his mouth felt wrong. She had never trusted Robert. From the moment my mother brought him home 8 years ago, Grace had warned me. Watch out for that one, she had said. He's got sticky fingers and a silver tongue. She had been right. 3 years into their marriage, Robert, who was in charge of our family business's money, kept saying our financial problems were just bad luck. But Grace knew better. She started gathering evidence, tracking numbers, writing everything down. Her ring collection wasn't just a hobby, it was a code. Each ring had a story, and if Robert had looked closer, he might have realized that those stories were about him. I kept unpacking, remembering my last conversation with Grace before she passed. The proof is in the collection, she had told me. Each ring, each document, it's all there. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. I hadn't understood then. But over the years, as I watched Robert drain our family's money while pretending everything was fine, I finally put the pieces together. Where did you sell them? I asked casually, hanging up a dress. I might know someone who likes vintage jewelry. Robert waved a hand. Some dealer in Chicago. Paid in cash, no questions asked. Best way to do it. I nodded. Chicago. That confirmed my suspicions. Well, I said, closing my suitcase. I should get some rest. Long flight. Robert stayed in the doorway a moment longer, looking unsure. He had gotten what he wanted. The rings were gone. And he thought that meant the evidence was gone too. But what he didn't know was that I had been preparing for this. My grandmother had left behind detailed records, and I had already cracked the code. Each ring matched a financial transaction, proof of how Robert had been stealing from our family business for years. And thanks to my grandmother's careful planning, I had copies of everything, documents, appraisals, notes, all backed up safely online, waiting for the perfect moment. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the quiet creaks of the house. Through the wall, I could hear Robert and my mother talking in their room. She didn't even cry, Robert said, sounding annoyed. Just accepted it like it didn't matter. Maybe she's finally growing up, my mother replied. Learning to let go, like you've been telling her. I turned over and pulled my phone from under my pillow. It was time to act. I sent a quick message to Michael, my contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. It's done. He sold the collection, just like we expected. Chicago dealer cash deal. Michael replied almost immediately. Perfect. That completes the pattern. We move forward. Are you sure? No turning back after this. I thought about my grandmother, how hard she worked to build our family's business, and how Robert had spent years stealing from it while convincing my mother he was helping. I'm sure. I typed back. It's time to finish what Grace started. The next morning, I drove to our family's flagship store in downtown Seattle. My grandparents had built the business from nothing, and now we had 12 locations across the Pacific Northwest. Profits had been dropping for years, even though sales were steady. As I walked through the showroom, I saw familiar faces among the staff. I remembered following Grace through the same space as a child, learning from her, not just about jewelry, but about honesty, about building something that lasts. Elizabeth. Robert's loud voice cut through the store. He walked toward me, arms open in an exaggerated welcome. Didn't expect to see you today. Thought you'd be resting after your trip. Just wanted to check in. I said, noticing how some employees stiffened when he got close. They knew something was wrong, even if they couldn't prove it. See how things are going. Everything's fine, he said quickly, too quickly. In fact, I was just about to make some calls about a new investment. Great opportunity. I had no doubt. Another fake company, another trick to move stolen money. I had studied Grace's notes and seen the patterns. Robert shifting funds through a tangled web of transactions, always staying just out of reach. Sounds interesting, I said. Maybe we can talk about it over lunch. I'd love to learn more about the business side of things. Robert's eyes narrowed slightly. In all these years, I'd never shown interest in his financial dealings. My sudden curiosity put him on edge. Sure, he said slowly. Let's do lunch tomorrow. I have some important meetings today. Of course. I smiled. Tomorrow's perfect. Oh, and Robert? I called as he turned to leave. Thanks for handling grandmother's rings. You're right, it's time for some changes around here. He paused, searching my face for sarcasm. Finding none, he gave a short nod and walked off. As soon as he was gone, I sent another text to Michael. He took the bait. He's nervous about my sudden interest in the business. Good, Michael replied. Keep him talking. We've traced the Chicago dealer. Just need a few more days. I walked through the store, running my fingers over the displays, remembering Grace's lessons about quality and craftsmanship. Robert thought selling her collection had erased her influence. In reality, he had just given me the final proof I needed to expose him. Tomorrow's lunch would be interesting, but first, I had one more stop. I drove to the cemetery where Grace was buried, placing fresh flowers on her grave. The cool autumn wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of rain. It's happening, Gran, I whispered. Everything you predicted. Everything you prepared for. Robert finally made his move. I touched the simple gold ring on my right hand, the only one from Grace's collection that Robert hadn't sold. She gave it to me the day before she died, along with a single piece of paper. At the time, it didn't seem important. But now, along with all her other records, that paper would help bring down the man who had spent years stealing from our family while pretending to protect it. You were right, I whispered. The truth always comes out. Sometimes it just needs a little help. The next day was gray and drizzly, typical Seattle weather. I arrived at Luciano's, Robert's favorite overpriced Italian restaurant, 5 minutes early. He was already there, sipping a martini at 11:30 in the morning. Elizabeth, he said, standing as I reached the table. Glad you could make it. I ordered you a glass of wine. Just water for me, I told the waiter. I need a clear head for business discussions. Robert's smile tightened. Of course, always so serious, just like Grace. I pulled out a small notebook. Speaking of Grace, I've been going through some of her old business records. Interesting stuff. His martini paused halfway to his lips. Old records? What kind of records? Oh, you know, transaction histories, supplier contracts, investment details. She was very organized. I watched him closely. Did you know she kept a file for every ring in her collection? Every purchase, every certificate, every business connection. Robert set his glass down hard. Those files were destroyed years ago during the office renovation. The paper copies, yes, I said. But Grace believed in backups. Digital copies, safe and secure. The color drained from his face. You're bluffing. There's no way. Robert. A new voice cut him off. 2 men in suits stood beside our table. I'm Agent Michael Chen, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need you to come with us. What happened next was almost like a movie. Robert jumped up, knocking over the table in his panic. He ran 3 steps before another agent blocked him. The restaurant fell silent as he was handcuffed and led away, shouting that he was innocent. I calmly sipped my water. Miss Chen, Agent Chen said, we'll need you to come with us to make a formal statement. I nodded, gathering my things. Of course, just let me call my mother first. That was the hardest part. My mother had always been brilliant at designing jewelry, but she trusted Robert completely with the business finances. Finding out he had been stealing from us for years would break her heart. As I listened to her sobs over the phone, I knew we had done the right thing. The truth hurt, but lies had already cost us too much. At the FBI office, I handed over everything. Grace's records, the connection between the rings and Robert's fraud, the fake suppliers, the hidden bank accounts. Your grandmother was brilliant, Agent Chen said, flipping through the evidence. She left a perfect paper trail of Robert's crimes hidden in the details of her collection. He thought selling the rings would erase the proof, I said. Instead, it only confirmed everything. The investigation moved fast. The Chicago dealer turned out to be one of Robert's accomplices, helping him launder money. The rings were recovered, each one still carrying its hidden evidence. Facing overwhelming proof, Robert took a plea deal, 8 years in prison and full repayment of the money he stole. The total amount shocked even me, nearly $12 million over 7 years. My mother filed for divorce right away. She put all her energy into rebuilding the business, turning her pain into something positive. Together, we updated our systems, improved security, and brought our family company back to its former success. 6 months later, I stood in the store's newly renovated vault, carefully placing Grace's recovered rings in a special display. Each piece sparkled under the lights, a symbol of the justice we had achieved. Your grandmother would be proud, my mother said softly, not just because we saved the business, but because you handled everything just like she would have, with patience and careful planning. I touched the simple gold ring I still wore, Grace's last gift to me. She had taught me that real justice isn't about revenge. It's about standing up for what's right, no matter how long it takes. That evening, I visited Grace's grave again. The rain had stopped and the night was clear. I placed white roses beside her headstone. We did it, Gran, I whispered. Robert never saw it coming. He was so focused on himself that he didn't see the truth right in front of him. I told her about the business, how it was thriving again, and how her ring collection now stood as a symbol of strength, inspiring the next generation of women in our family. On my way home, I passed the prison where Robert was serving his sentence. I didn't stop or even slow down. He was part of the past now, a lesson in trust and vigilance. The next morning, a package arrived at the store. Inside was a letter from Robert's former secretary and a stack of documents. I always knew something was wrong, she wrote, but I was too afraid to speak up. Your grandmother once told me that the truth always finds a way, like a diamond rising through the earth. She was right. These are copies of everything I saved over the years, just in case someone was brave enough to act. I placed the documents alongside Grace's carefully coded records. Together, they told a story of greed and betrayal, but also of wisdom, courage, and justice. The business continued to grow. We created the Grace Chen Foundation, offering scholarships for women in business and forensic accounting. Every recipient received a small gold ring, a reminder that patience, intelligence, and careful documentation are the best tools against corruption. Years later, when Robert was released from prison, he tried to reach out. His lawyer sent a letter full of apologies and excuses, asking for a second chance. I sent back a single photo, Grace's restored ring collection, now displayed with the evidence that had exposed him. No words were needed. The truth, as Grace always said, speaks for itself. Some called it karma. Others called it justice. But I knew it was something simpler. A grandmother's love and wisdom kept alive in a collection of rings worth more than anyone had imagined. Well, anyone except Grace. The last paper she gave me, the one that once seemed unimportant, now hangs framed in my office. In her elegant handwriting it says, "The truth is like a diamond. It may stay hidden for years, but its value never fades. Watch, wait, and when the time is right, let it shine." And shine it did, bringing light to darkness and justice to those who thought they were untouchable, just as Grace had planned all along.
The first time I truly felt like an outsider in my own family wasn't at a celebration or holiday gathering. It was at my beloved Aunt Lillian's funeral. Standing alone beneath the massive oak tree that shadowed her casket, I watched my cousins huddle together, their designer black dresses and suits a stark contrast to my simple thrift store ensemble. My name is Callie, and I've spent 31 years trying to belong in a family that treats wealth like oxygen, essential for survival. The irony? Aunt Lillian was the only one who ever made me feel like I belonged. "Look who decided to show up." Camilla's voice cut through the somber atmosphere as she approached, Quinn and Derek trailing behind her like perfectly trained show dogs. "I'm surprised you could take time away from your little charity project." I straightened my spine, forcing a polite smile. "It's a women's shelter, Camilla, and Aunt Lillian volunteered there too." "Please," Derek scoffed, adjusting his Italian silk tie. Aunt Lillian would never step foot in such a place. She had standards. The memory of Aunt Lillian quietly sorting donations and counseling abuse survivors flashed through my mind, but I kept it to myself. She'd always asked me to keep her volunteer work private, away from her judgmental children. "The lawyer's waiting," Quinn announced, checking her phone. "We should head to the reading." I took a step forward, but Camilla's manicured hand shot out, stopping me. "Oh, honey, didn't anyone tell you? The reading is for immediate family only." "I am immediate family," I protested, heat rising to my cheeks. "Aunt Lillian was my mother's sister." "Yes, but we all know how Aunt Lillian felt about your branch of the family tree." Derek smirked. "Always the black sheep, weren't you?" Quinn at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "It's just, the lawyer was very specific about who should attend. We wouldn't want to waste anyone's time," Camilla added, her smile sharp as a knife. "I mean, what could Aunt Lillian possibly leave to someone who spends their days serving soup to homeless people?" I watched them walk away, their expensive shoes clicking against the cemetery path. An elderly woman who'd been standing nearby approached me, her kind eyes filled with concern. "I couldn't help but overhear," she said softly. "I'm Margaret. I worked with Lillian at the country club." "Nice to meet you," I managed, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "Your aunt spoke about you often," Margaret continued, surprising me. "She was so proud of your work at the shelter, said you were the only one who understood what really mattered in life." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Chelsea, the shelter's director. "Need you at the center ASAP. Important news about Lillian." I glanced at my cousin's retreating backs, then back at my phone. Something in my gut told me this was important. "Thank you, Margaret," I said, squeezing her hand. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that today." As I walked to my car, a reliable but ancient Honda Civic that stuck out like a sore thumb among the luxury vehicles, I heard Camilla's laugh echo across the cemetery. 10 years ago, that sound would have made me shrink into myself. Today, it just made me sad. "You know what's funny?" I heard Derek say to his sisters. "She actually thought she'd be included in the will reading. As if Aunt Lillian would leave anything to someone who couldn't even afford a proper funeral outfit." I slid into my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The last time I'd seen Aunt Lillian, just days before she passed, she'd held my hand and whispered, "Patience, dear one. Everything will make sense soon." Starting my car, I took one last look at the cemetery. My cousins had disappeared into their chauffeured car, probably heading to the lawyer's office to divide up what they saw as their rightful inheritance. They had no idea that Aunt Lillian had visited the shelter every Tuesday for the past 5 years, working quietly alongside me to help women rebuild their lives. They had no idea about a lot of things. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Chelsea. "Found something Lillian left for you. You're going to want to see this." I put the car in drive, leaving behind the cemetery and my cousin's cruel laughter. Aunt Lillian always said timing was everything, and something told me she had one last lesson to teach about patience, karma, and the true meaning of family legacy. As I merged onto the highway, heading toward the shelter, I couldn't help but smile. Maybe being an outsider wasn't such a bad thing after all. Sometimes it gives you the perfect vantage point to see what others miss. The women's shelter stood in stark contrast to the mansions my cousins called home. A modest 3-story building with fading paint and a small garden out front. But unlike those cold marble halls, this place radiated warmth. As I walked through the front door, the familiar scent of coffee and fresh-baked cookies wrapped around me like a hug. "There you are." Chelsea rushed forward, her gray curls bouncing. "How was the funeral?" "About as pleasant as you'd expect," I said, hanging up my coat. My cousins made sure to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy. Before Chelsea could respond, Maria, one of our regular volunteers, poked her head out of the kitchen. "Is it true about Miss Lillian? She really passed away?" I nodded, and Maria's eyes welled up with tears. "But she was just here last week, helping me organize the donation closet." Chelsea shot me a knowing look. Most of the women here had no idea she was from Money. She'd show up in her gardening clothes, insisting on being called just Lillian. That's because the real Lillian wasn't the society woman my cousins thought they knew, I said, following Chelsea to her office. Remember how she used to bring those incredible homemade cookies? And tell everyone they were store-bought because she didn't want to seem like she was showing off. Chelsea laughed, then grew serious. Which makes what I'm about to show you even more important. She unlocked her desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. She dropped this off last month, made me promise not to give it to you until after she was gone. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Aunt Lillian's elegant handwriting spelled out my name on the front. She came to see me that day. Chelsea said softly. Told me she'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer 6 months earlier. Said she had some loose ends to tie up. I sank into the chair across from Chelsea's desk, the envelope heavy in my hands. She never told any of us she was sick. Open it, Chelsea urged. She was very specific about the timing. Just then, a commotion erupted in the hallway. 2 women were arguing, their voices rising. Chelsea sighed. I should handle this. Take your time with the letter. Alone in the office, I traced my finger over Aunt Lillian's handwriting, remembering the first time she'd caught me volunteering here 5 years ago. I thought I recognized that laugh, she'd said, standing in the doorway in old jeans and a faded sweater. Don't look so scared, dear. I'm not here to tell tales to the family. That day, she'd rolled up her sleeves and helped me sort donations for 3 hours. It became our secret Tuesday ritual. The black sheep and the family matriarch, working side by side to help women rebuild their lives. Taking a deep breath, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. My dearest Callie, if you're reading this, I've already passed. Don't waste time mourning. We both know I lived exactly as I chose to. What matters now is ensuring my legacy continues in the right hands. By now, my children and your cousins will be gathering for the reading of my official will. Let them. What they don't know is that 3 months ago, I made some significant changes to my estate planning. The shelter's building deed is enclosed with this letter. I purchased it last year when the previous owners threatened to sell. It's yours now, along with an endowment to ensure its continued operation. There's more, but that will become clear soon enough. You alone understood what I've known all along. That true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch. While the others were chasing status at country clubs, you were here, helping women find their strength. Don't reveal anything yet. Let the official reading proceed. Sometimes the best lessons come from unexpected moments. All my love, Aunt Lillian. P.S. Check the cookie jar in the kitchen. I left my secret recipe there last week. Those women deserve the real thing, not store-bought substitutes. My vision blurred with tears as I pulled out the property deed. Chelsea knocked softly before entering. You okay? She asked, closing the door behind her. I handed her the letter, watching her eyes widen as she read. Oh my God, she whispered. She bought the building? She knew the shelter was at risk, I said, wiping my eyes. All those times she was organizing the donation closet, she was actually planning this. My phone buzzed. A text from Quinn. We'll reading tomorrow at 2. Not that it matters to you. Chelsea handed the letter back, squeezing my shoulder. What are you going to do? I tucked the letter and deed safely in my bag, thinking of Aunt Lillian's words about unexpected moments and lessons. First, I said, standing up, I'm going to check that cookie jar. Then I'm going to do exactly what Aunt Lillian asked. Wait for the right moment to show them who she really was, and what family really means. Back home in my small apartment, I spread Aunt Lillian's documents across my kitchen table. The property deed was just the beginning. Tucked inside the envelope, I found a USB drive, bank statements, and another sealed letter marked, Read after the will. My hands shook as I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. A single video file appeared, dated just 2 months ago. Aunt Lillian's face filled the screen, looking tired but determined. Hello, dear. Her voice rang clear through my speakers. If you're watching this, you've already found the deed. But there's more to tell you. I paused the video, needing a moment. Even through the screen, her presence felt so real it hurt. My phone buzzed again. Camilla this time. Hope you're not too disappointed about missing tomorrow's reading. Though really, what did you expect? I hit play again. The lawyers will read a will tomorrow that my children and your cousins expect, Aunt Lillian continued. They'll squabble over the house, the cars, the jewelry, all the things they think matter. But my real will, the one that matters, was filed last month. She leaned closer to the camera, her eyes fierce. I've watched them all these years, Callie. Watched how they treated you, how they chased status while you built something meaningful. The shelter isn't just a building. It's hope for women who need it most. And you're the only one who truly understands that. A knock at my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Quinn standing in the hallway, shifting nervously. I know you're home, she called out. Your car's outside. I closed my laptop and opened the door. Quinn, what are you doing here? She brushed past me into the apartment, her designer perfume overwhelming in my small space. I wanted to make sure you understood about tomorrow. It's not personal. Isn't it? I gestured to my couch. Want to sit? She perched on the edge, looking uncomfortable. Derek and Camilla think it's better if you're not there. They're worried you might make a scene. When have I ever made a scene, Quinn? She had the grace to look embarrassed. Look, we all know Aunt Lillian was different in her last years. Started acting strange, volunteering at that shelter. Derek thinks she wasn't thinking clearly. I thought of the sharp, determined woman in the video. She knew exactly what she was doing. Did she, though? Quinn stood up, pacing. She used to take us shopping, buy us whatever we wanted. Then suddenly she's wearing old clothes and hanging out in some charity shelter? That's not normal. Maybe she found something more meaningful than shopping. Quinn stopped pacing, her eyes landing on the papers spread across my table. What's all that? I quickly gathered them up. Just work stuff. Right. Your important shelter work. She headed for the door, then paused. You know, Camilla's already talking about selling the shelter building. Says the land's worth millions to developers. My heart raced, but I kept my face neutral. Is that so? Just don't get your hopes up about anything, okay? It's better that way. She left, closing the door softly behind her. I returned to my laptop, hitting play on Aunt Lillian's video. I've left everything to you, Callie, she continued. The house, the investments, everything. But most importantly, I've left you my truth. Let them have their reading tomorrow. Let them show who they really are. Then, when the time is right, show them who I really was. The video ended. I opened the final letter with trembling fingers. My dearest Callie, by now they've shown their true colors at the reading. Remember, real strength isn't in attacking, but in standing firm in your truth. The official papers are with my lawyer, Sandra Mills. She'll contact you after tomorrow's charade. The shelter is yours, protected and endowed. The rest, well, let's just say your cousins are in for quite a surprise. Use it wisely, dear one. Show them what real family legacy looks like. All my love, Aunt Lillian. I folded the letter carefully, thinking of Quinn's words about selling the shelter, of Camilla's smugness, of Derek's certainty about who Aunt Lillian was. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. This is Sandra Mills. Meeting tomorrow after the reading? 4 p.m. at my office. Bring the letters and USB drive. I texted back a simple yes, then gathered all of Aunt Lillian's documents into a secure folder. Tomorrow, my cousins would gather to divide what they thought was their inheritance. They had no idea that Aunt Lillian had orchestrated the perfect lesson about karma, justice, and the true meaning of wealth. For now, though, I had a batch of cookies to bake. After all, I had her secret recipe, and the women at the shelter deserved something special. I sat in my car outside the law office, watching my cousins arrive in their luxury vehicles. Through the large windows, I could see them gathering in the conference room, already arguing about something. Even from here, I could read Camilla's animated gestures. She was probably laying claim to Aunt Lillian's art collection. My phone lit up with a text from Chelsea. The vultures circling yet? You have no idea, I replied, then added a photo of Derek dramatically pounding the conference table. I wasn't supposed to be here, but I needed to see this play out. Parking around the corner had given me a perfect view of the show. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, entered the room with a thin folder, the will they were expecting. My phone rang. Sandra Mills. Are you watching? She asked without preamble. From my car. They're about to start. Good. Stay there. I want you to see their reactions when they realize that folder contains nothing but a letter. Inside, Mr. Patterson opened the folder. Even from here, I could see Camilla's face redden as he began to read. She shot up from her chair, snatching the paper from his hands. This is it? Her voice carried through the glass. One page? This can't be everything. Quinn pressed her hands to her face while Derek paced the room like a caged animal. I cracked my window to hear better. This is the only will we have on file, Mr. Patterson said calmly. It simply states that all matters regarding the estate will be handled by another attorney, Sandra Mills. Who the hell is Sandra Mills? Derek's voice boomed. I've never heard of her, Quinn whispered. Why would Aunt Lillian do this? Camilla pulled out her phone, probably Googling Sandra's name. This doesn't make sense. The house alone is worth millions. The art collection, the investments, where is all of that? Perhaps, Mr. Patterson suggested. You should contact Ms. Mills. I'm calling our family lawyer, Derek announced. This is ridiculous. We'll contest it. My phone buzzed again. Sandra. Time for phase 2. Meet me at my office now. I started my car just as Camilla stormed out of the building, mascara running down her cheeks. She was so focused on her phone, she didn't even notice me driving past. Sandra's office was across town, in a modest building, nothing like the gleaming tower my cousins were leaving. She greeted me with a warm smile and ushered me into her office. Right on schedule, she said, checking her watch. They should be calling any... Her phone rang. She put it on speaker. Sandra Mills speaking. This is Derek. What kind of game are you playing? Where's our aunt's real will? Mr. Hudson, I've been expecting your call. Would you like to schedule a meeting? We demand to know what's going on. Camilla's voice cut in. We're her children. Of course, Sandra replied smoothly. I'm free at 4 p.m. today. Will you all be attending? We'll be there with our lawyer, Derek snapped. Wonderful. Oh, and please be aware, your cousin Callie will be joining us. The line went silent for a moment before Quinn spoke. Callie, what does she have to do with this? Everything will be explained at 4 p.m. See you then. She hung up, turning to me with a twinkle in her eye. Your aunt was right about them. Now, let's prepare. They'll try to paint you as a manipulator who took advantage of a confused old woman. But we have the video, I reminded her, and the letters, and the shelter's documentation, and 5 years of witnesses who saw her volunteer work. Sandra pulled out a thick folder. Your aunt spent months preparing for this. She wanted to teach them a lesson, yes, but she also wanted to protect you. I don't care about the money, I said quietly. I just want to protect her legacy. The money is part of her legacy, Sandra corrected me. And she trusted you to use it wisely. My phone chimed with a group text from my cousins. Derek. Whatever you did to manipulate Aunt Lillian will expose you. Camilla. Hope you're happy with yourself. This isn't over. Quinn. How could you do this to us? Sandra read the messages over my shoulder and smiled. They still think this is about them. Shall we show them what it's really about? I thought of Aunt Lillian's video, her letters, her quiet work at the shelter. Yes, I said. It's time they met the real Aunt Lillian. We spent the next hour reviewing documents and preparing for the storm that was coming. At 3:55, Sandra's receptionist buzzed. They're here, all 3, plus their lawyer. I took a deep breath, touching the locket Aunt Lillian had given me last Christmas. Inside was a tiny note that read, Sometimes the greatest gift is showing people who they really are. Ready? Sandra asked, standing. I nodded, straightening my spine. Let's finish what Aunt Lillian started. The conference room crackled with tension as my cousins filed in, their lawyer trailing behind them. Camilla's eyes narrowed when she saw me, while Derek made a show of adjusting his expensive cufflinks. Quinn wouldn't look at me at all. Let's get straight to the point. Their lawyer started, but Sandra held up her hand. Before we begin, we have something you need to see. She set up a laptop on the conference table. This video was recorded by Lillian 2 months ago. Objection. Their lawyer interrupted. We have no way to verify. The video is time-stamped and notarized. Sandra replied calmly, hitting play. Aunt Lillian's face appeared on screen, and Quinn gasped. She looked healthier here than in her final days, but the determination in her eyes was unmistakable. My dear children, she began, if you're watching this, you've already discovered that my will isn't what you expected. You're probably angry, confused, maybe even planning to contest it. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair. For years, I've watched you chase status and wealth, treating kindness as weakness and compassion as foolishness. You mocked your cousin Callie for working at a shelter, never knowing I worked alongside her every Tuesday. That's ridiculous, Camilla scoffed. Mom would never... Check my calendar, Aunt Lillian continued, as if anticipating the interruption. Every Tuesday for 5 years. Ask the women at the shelter. While you were at country club luncheons, I was serving soup and counseling abuse survivors. Quinn's face had gone pale. The gardening clothes, she whispered. You said she was going through a strange phase? I've left everything to Callie, Aunt Lillian announced, because she alone understood what real wealth is. The shelter, the house, the investments, all of it. Not out of spite, but because I trust her to use it wisely. This is preposterous. Their lawyer sputtered. Clearly she was being manipulated. Sandra pulled out a thick folder. I have 5 years of documented volunteer hours, witness statements, and medical evaluations proving Lillian was of sound mind when she made these decisions. She was our mother. Derek slammed his hand on the table. Everything was supposed to go to us. Play the rest, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken. Aunt Lillian's voice filled the room again. But I'm offering you one chance. Callie has instructions to set up a charitable foundation. If you choose to participate, to truly understand the work we do, you can each have a role. The choice is yours. Continue fighting over money or help build something meaningful. The video ended. Silence filled the room. This is your doing. Camilla pointed at me, mascara smearing again. You turned her against us. Did I? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. Here's Aunt Lillian last Christmas, serving dinner at the shelter. Here she is helping a woman move into her first apartment after leaving her abuser. Here she is teaching a financial literacy class to survivors. Quinn grabbed the phone, swiping through pictures with trembling hands. Why didn't she tell us? Would you have listened? I asked gently. Or would you have done exactly what you're doing now? Assume someone manipulated her? The will is ironclad, Sandra added. You can contest it, but you'll lose. And you'll spend years in court while the foundation's work continues without you. Derek stood up abruptly. This is absurd. Come on, we're leaving. But Quinn stayed seated, still staring at my phone. Wait, she said. I want to see the shelter. Quinn, Camilla hissed. Don't fall for this. Fall for what? Quinn's voice cracked. Mom spent 5 years living a whole life we knew nothing about. Don't you want to know why? The foundation meeting is tomorrow at 10 a.m., Sandra said. At the shelter. Anyone who wants to understand Lillian's legacy is welcome to attend. Derek grabbed his suit jacket. This isn't over. Come on, Quinn. But Quinn handed me back my phone, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. I'll be there tomorrow. You're choosing her over us? Camilla's voice rose to a shriek. No, Quinn stood up. I'm choosing to find out who Mom really was. After they left, Sandra turned to me. That went exactly as your aunt predicted. She said Quinn would be the first to understand. I nodded, thinking of the last photo on my phone. Aunt Lillian and me, covered in flour from baking cookies, laughing at the shelter's kitchen. The real her, the one they never knew. The foundation meeting tomorrow, I said. Do you think any of them will actually come? Sandra gathered her papers. Your aunt said to have the cookies ready, just in case. She was usually right about these things. I touched the locket again, smiling. Then I better get baking. I have a recipe after all. At 9:55 the next morning, I arranged Aunt Lillian's cookies on a plate in the shelter's meeting room. Chelsea helped me set up chairs while shooting nervous glances at the door. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "After yesterday, they might show up with an army of lawyers." "Then we'll offer the lawyers cookies too," I said, adjusting the photo display we'd created. Dozens of pictures of Aunt Lillian at the shelter, helping women rebuild their lives. At exactly 10 a.m., Quinn walked in alone. She'd traded her usual designer outfit for jeans and a simple sweater. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. "I brought coffee," she said awkwardly, holding up a carrier. I remembered, in the photos, Mom always had a coffee cup in her hand. "French vanilla with extra cream." Chelsea smiled. That was her favorite. "I didn't know that," Quinn whispered, setting down the coffee. I didn't know anything. Before I could respond, the door opened again. Camilla stood there, looking uncomfortable in 4-inch heels. "This doesn't mean I accept any of this," she announced. "I'm just here to protect our interests." "Have a cookie," I offered, holding out the plate. "Aunt Lillian's recipe." Camilla started to refuse, then froze. "Wait, these are her Christmas cookies. The ones she stopped making years ago because she said she was too busy." "She made them here every week," Chelsea said. "Said the women needed something that tasted like home." Camilla sank into a chair, taking a cookie with trembling hands. Quinn sat beside her, passing her a coffee. "Derek's not coming," Quinn said quietly. "He's meeting with lawyers about contesting the will." "Let me show you something," I said, pulling out Aunt Lillian's volunteer log. "Every Tuesday for 5 years. She never missed a day, even when she was sick." "Sick?" Camilla's head snapped up. "What do you mean, sick?" The door opened again, and Maria walked in with several other shelter residents. "Is it true?" Maria asked. "About Miss Lillian leaving everything to the shelter?" "Not exactly," I explained. "She left everything to a foundation that will support the shelter and expand its services." "She helped me get my GED," one woman spoke up. "Tutored me every week for months." "She taught me how to budget," another added. "Helped me open my first bank account." Quinn was crying openly now. "Why didn't she tell us?" "Because you wouldn't have understood," a familiar voice said from the doorway. We all turned to see Margaret from the funeral, the country club worker. I helped her keep her secret. She changed clothes in my office before coming here. "But why?" Camilla demanded. "We're her children. She could have told us. Remember when I started volunteering here?" I asked gently. "You all mocked me, called it a waste of time, said I was embarrassing the family." "We were wrong," Quinn whispered. Camilla stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. She was our mother. Everything she had should have gone to us, not some charity case." "Is that what you think this is?" Chelsea asked, her voice sharp. "Come with me." She led us to the shelter's kitchen, where a plaque hung on the wall. It read, "The Lillian Hudson Teaching Kitchen, where women learn to feed their souls." "Your mother funded this kitchen last year," Chelsea explained. "Said every woman deserves a place to create something beautiful." "She spent her money on this?" Camilla gestured around. "Instead of us?" "No," I corrected her. "She invested in changing lives, including yours if you'll let her." "The foundation meeting," Quinn said suddenly. "What exactly does it involve?" I pulled out Aunt Lillian's final plan. Blueprints for expanding the shelter, adding a daycare center, creating job training programs. She wanted it to be a family legacy, I explained, but a different kind than you're used to. "I want in," Quinn said firmly. "I want to understand who she really was." Camilla stared at the cookie in her hand, then at the women gathered around us. Women whose lives Aunt Lillian had touched. "She really came here every week?" she asked softly. Maria nodded. Rain or shine, said it was the best part of her week. Camilla's phone buzzed, probably Derek with updates from the lawyers. She silenced it without looking. "Show me everything," she said finally. "Show me what she did here." I caught Chelsea's eye and smiled. Aunt Lillian had predicted this too, in her final letter. They'll fight it at first, but give them time. Show them what real wealth looks like. The cookies will help. Some lessons are best taught with a little sweetness. I picked up the shelter's volunteer log and opened it to a fresh page. Who wants to sign up for Tuesday shifts? Quinn reached for the pen first. The courthouse steps felt colder than usual as I waited for Sandra to arrive. 2 weeks had passed since the shelter meeting, and Derek had made good on his threat to contest the will. Today was our first hearing. Quinn appeared beside me, clutching 2 coffee cups. Thought you might need this. Thanks, I said, surprised. Are you sure you want to be seen with the enemy? Stop, she sighed. I've been doing shifts at the shelter. I get it now. Mom wasn't crazy or manipulated. She was amazing. Camilla's Mercedes pulled up and she stepped out wearing a simple black suit instead of her usual flashy attire. Derek's already inside with the lawyers. He's not happy I'm testifying for your side. Before I could respond, Sandra arrived with her team, carrying boxes of evidence. Ready? The courtroom was packed. Shelter residents filled the back rows, while Derek sat at the front with 3 expensive lawyers. His face darkened when he saw Camilla and Quinn sit on my side. All rise, the bailiff called as Judge Martinez entered. Derek's lead lawyer started with exactly the argument we'd expected. Your Honor, we contend that Lillian Hudson was unduly influenced in her final years, led astray from her family obligations by manipulation and— Objection, Sandra interrupted. Counsel is making unfounded accusations. We have extensive documentation of Mrs. Hudson's sound mental state and deliberate choices. Proceed with evidence, Judge Martinez ordered. Sandra played the video testimony. Then came the parade of witnesses. Shelter residents, volunteers, even Lillian's doctors confirming her mental clarity. But the real shock came when Quinn took the stand. Ms. Hudson, Derek's lawyer approached. Isn't it true your mother showed signs of mental decline? No. Quinn's voice was firm. She showed signs of being herself, her real self, for the first time in years. I just didn't want to see it. But surely you agree this radical change in behavior? You mean helping others instead of buying designer handbags? Quinn interrupted. I've spent 2 weeks working at the shelter. I've seen the lives she changed. The only thing radical was how blind we were. Derek stood up, face red. She's been brainwashed too. Mr. Hudson, the judge warned, control yourself. Next came Camilla's testimony. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking slightly. I'd like to play something, she said. A voicemail from Mom I saved from last year. I didn't understand it then. The court fell silent as Aunt Lillian's voice filled the room. Camilla, darling, I wish you could see what I see at the shelter today. A woman just got her first job after leaving an abusive marriage. She's starting over with nothing, but she has everything. Reminds me of what real strength looks like. I hope someday you'll understand. Love you. I deleted all her other messages about the shelter. Camilla's voice cracked. I thought she was going through a phase. I was wrong. Derek's lawyers huddled together, whispering urgently. But their star witness was yet to come. A private investigator they'd hired to dig into my past. Miss Hudson, he addressed me on the stand. Isn't it true you orchestrated this entire situation? Befriended your aunt when she was vulnerable? I opened my handbag and pulled out a stack of papers. These are donation records from the shelter. Every Tuesday for 5 years, Aunt Lillian came on her own. She found us. She chose this path. I never asked her for anything. But surely— I have security footage, I continued. 5 years of her arriving every week, helping women rebuild their lives. Would you like to see it? The investigator faltered. Derek's face had gone from red to pale. Then Maria stood up in the back of the courtroom. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge nodded. Miss Lillian saved my life. Maria's voice shook. Not with money, but with time, with cookies, with believing in me. She wasn't manipulated. She was the strongest person I knew. One by one, women stood up in the courtroom, each with a story about Aunt Lillian's impact on their lives. Judge Martinez raised her hand for silence. I've seen enough. This will is not only valid, but represents a clear and conscious choice by Lillian Hudson to create a meaningful legacy. Case dismissed. Derek stormed out, his lawyers trailing behind. Quinn and Camilla hugged me, both crying. He'll come around, Quinn whispered. Eventually. Outside, the shelter residents were celebrating. Chelsea appeared with a familiar-looking cookie tin. Found this in Lillian's old office, she said. It's marked for the day they finally understand. Inside were cookies, still fresh, with a note. Share these when the fighting stops. Real family is built on love, not lawyers. L. We passed them around, standing in the sunshine, watching as Derek's car sped away. Sometimes I realized winning isn't about defeating someone. It's about showing them a better way to be. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh paint as I unlocked the shelter's new front doors. The expanded building gleamed in the morning light, 3 times larger than before, with the daycare center Aunt Lillian had dreamed of. Still can't believe how fast construction finished, Quinn said, falling into step beside me. She'd traded her designer wardrobe permanently for practical clothes, perfect for chasing after the shelter's children. The contractor said he'd never seen permits processed so quickly, I replied. Almost like someone pulled some strings at City Hall. Quinn smiled mysteriously. Camilla might have mentioned something about that. Turns out her country club connections are good for more than just charity galas. Inside, the new teaching kitchen buzzed with activity. Camilla stood at the center island, her sleeves rolled up, teaching a cooking class to 5 residents. Remember what Aunt Lillian always said. She demonstrated proper knife technique. Cooking is therapy for the soul. Speaking of therapy, Quinn nodded toward the new counseling wing. Did you see the waiting list for Sandra's legal aid clinic? Full through December, I confirmed. Turns out combining legal services with emotional support was exactly what many women needed. The front desk phone rang. Maria, now our full-time office manager, answered it. Lillian Hudson Women's Center, she said proudly. Then her expression changed. Oh, yes, he's welcome to come tour the facility. She covered the receiver. It's Derek. He wants to see the center. Quinn and I exchanged glances. We hadn't heard from our brother since the court case 3 months ago. Tell him to come now, I decided. We're all here. 20 minutes later, Derek walked through the doors, looking uncomfortable in casual clothes instead of his usual suit. This is different than I expected, he said, taking in the bright, welcoming space. Come see everything. Quinn linked her arm through his, starting with Mom's favorite spot. We showed him the teaching kitchen, where Camilla's class was pulling fresh cookies from the oven, the daycare center, where children of shelter residents played safely while their mothers attended job training, the counseling rooms, the computer lab, the rooftop garden. And this, I saved for last, is what Aunt Lillian left for you. I opened her old office, now a financial literacy classroom. On the wall hung a photo of young Derek sitting on Aunt Lillian's lap, both laughing as he tried to balance her checkbook. She said you were the first person who made her think about money differently, I explained. That's why she wanted you to run the Foundation's financial education program. But I fought the will, he said quietly. Tried to destroy everything she built. And now you have a chance to build something new. Camilla appeared in the doorway, offering him a cookie. That's what Mom was all about, right? Second chances? Derek took the cookie, staring at the photo. I was so angry about the money, about being left out. I never stopped to ask why. So ask now, Quinn suggested. We're all still learning who Mom really was. A commotion from the front desk interrupted us. A new arrival, a young mother with 2 small children, looking terrified and hopeful. I'll handle intake, Maria started to say, but Derek stepped forward. Let me, he said. I'd like to learn how to help. We watched as he introduced himself, gently offered the children cookies, showed them to the daycare center while Maria helped their mother with paperwork. He's a natural, Quinn whispered. Just like Mom was. Later, as the sun set through the new stained glass windows Aunt Lillian had designed, we gathered in the kitchen. Derek rolled up his sleeves and reached for the recipe card box. "Think you can teach me how to make her cookies?" he asked. "Better." Camilla pulled out a familiar tin. "Found this in her desk. Label says, 'For when the family's complete again.'" Inside were perfect cookies and a note. "Some ingredients take time to blend properly. Love is patient that way. L." We shared the cookies, sitting together in the kitchen where it all began. Through the open door, we could hear women laughing in the computer lab, children playing in the daycare, lives being rebuilt piece by piece. "She knew, didn't she?" Derek said softly. "That it would end like this?" "Not end," I corrected him. "Begin. She always said real wealth grows when you share it." Quinn raised her cookie in a toast. "To Aunt Lillian's real legacy." "To family," Camilla added. "To second chances," Derek said. I looked around at my transformed family and our transformed shelter and smiled. "To all of it," I said. "Every single crumb."
The phone vibrated against my desk for the third time in 5 minutes. Mom. Again. I let it buzz, watching it dance across my paperwork like a demented firefly while my stomach twisted into familiar knots. When it finally stopped, I counted to 10 before checking the voicemail. "Yasmin, darling, why aren't you picking up? It's urgent. Call me back immediately." I'm Yasmin, and at 35, I've become my family's personal bank. Not by choice, mind you, but through years of guilt-tripping, manipulation, and the crushing weight of obligation that comes with being the successful daughter. The phone buzzed again. This time I answered. "Finally!" Mom's voice crackled through the speaker. "I've been trying to reach you all morning." "I was in a meeting, Mom. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong exactly. We just need a small favor." Her tone shifted to that syrupy sweet register that always preceded a financial request. "The mortgage payment is due next week, and your father's hours got cut again." I pressed my fingers against my temples. "Mom, I just paid your mortgage 3 months ago. You promised that was the last time." "But darling, we're family. Family helps each other. Besides, you're doing so well with your business. What's a few $1,000s to you?" A few $1,000s. Just like the few thousand last month for Savannah's car repairs. And the few thousand before that for Dad's medical bills. And the countless other few thousands that had drained my savings account over the years. "I can't keep doing this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What was that?" "I said I can't." "Oh, before I forget," she interrupted, "Savannah needs new furniture for her apartment. Nothing fancy, just a living room set. I told her you'd help." The pen I'd been holding snapped in my hand, blue ink spreading across my fingers like a bruise. "You told her what?" "Well, she saw that lovely leather sofa in your office, and I mentioned you'd probably be happy to help her get something similar. She's your sister, after all." I stared at the sofa in question, a piece I'd saved for months to buy, a symbol of my hard work. Now my mother wanted to turn it into yet another obligation. "No." The word escaped before I could stop it. "Excuse me?" I said, "No, Mom. I can't keep doing this. I'm not an ATM." Silence crackled over the line. When she spoke again, her voice had that dangerous edge I remembered from childhood. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by being selfish?" "Selfish?" I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "I've given you over $50,000 in the past year alone. I've postponed buying a house, delayed starting a family, put my entire life on hold to support everyone else's needs. How is that selfish?" "We're your family!" she was shouting now. "Family takes care of each other." "When has anyone taken care of me?" The words hung in the air, heavy with years of unspoken resentment. "When's the last time anyone asked how I was doing? If I needed help? If I was happy?" "Oh, so now you're not happy? With your fancy office and your expensive furniture? Some people would be grateful for such success." "Grateful?" I stood up, pacing my office. "I built this business from nothing. While you and Dad were giving Savannah money for her third attempt at college, I was working 2 jobs and living on ramen noodles to make this happen. And now you act like my success is somehow yours to distribute? How dare you? No, Mom, how dare you? I'm done. No more money, no more guilt trips, no more treating me like a walking checkbook. You'll regret this, she hissed. When your father and I are out on the street, when your sister can't pay her bills, you'll regret being so heartless. I looked at my ink-stained hands, at the broken pen on my desk, at all the symbols of success that had become chains around my neck. The only thing I regret is not saying no sooner. The line went dead. My phone immediately lit up with text messages from Savannah. How could you do this to Mom? You're so selfish. I thought I could count on you. I blocked both their numbers, my hands shaking, but my mind clearer than it had been in years. Then I called my best friend, Raylan. Hey, I said when she answered. Remember how you said I needed to set boundaries? I think I just blew up all of them at once. Her warm laugh filled the line. Girl, it's about time. Want to grab coffee and talk about it? For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Yes, I really do. You should have seen her face when I finally said no, I said, stirring my latte while Raylan listened intently across the table. It was like I'd committed some cardinal sin. The sin of standing up for yourself? Raylan snorted. How dare you? The cafe buzzed with afternoon activity, but in our corner booth, I felt safe enough to let my guard down. Raylan had been my rock since law school, where we'd bonded over instant noodles and impossible deadlines. They're blowing up my email now, I said, showing her my phone. Mom sent 5 messages about how I'm destroying the family, and Savannah's threatening to tell everyone what a horrible sister I am. Let them. Raylan leaned forward, her attorney face on. You know what this is? This is extinction burst behavior. When people lose their source of benefits, they escalate dramatically before giving up. My phone pinged again. This time it was my father. Yasmin, please call your mother. She's very upset. We really need your help this month. Raylan watched as my hands started shaking. Give me that, she said, snatching the phone. We're setting up boundaries right now. What are you doing? Writing an email. Listen to this. Dear Mom and Dad, I love you, but I will no longer be providing financial support. My previous assistance was given freely, but it has become unhealthy for all of us. I'm happy to maintain a relationship based on mutual respect and love, but money is off the table. Love, Yasmin. I can't send that, I protested weakly. Watch me. She hit send before I could stop her. There, now let's work on your sister. The cafe door chimed, and I froze. Savannah stormed in, her face red with anger. Of course she'd know where to find me. I'd mentioned this cafe in our family group chat last week. How could you? She demanded, drawing stares from nearby tables. Mom's crying her eyes out. I started to shrink into my seat, but Raylan's foot nudged mine under the table. Stand tall, her eyes said. Savannah, I said, keeping my voice steady. This isn't the place. No, this is exactly the place. You sit here in your designer clothes, drinking your fancy coffee while our parents struggle? What kind of daughter are you? Raylan started to stand, but I touched her arm. I've got this. I faced my sister, channeling the confidence I used in business meetings. I'm the kind of daughter who's tired of being taken advantage of. The kind who's given everything she could until there was nothing left. The kind who's finally learning to say no. But the furniture? Buy your own furniture, Savannah. Get a job, take out a loan, do whatever adults do when they need money. I did it. You can too. Her face crumpled. But I can't. My credit's shot and no one's hiring in my field. That's not my problem anymore. The words felt foreign in my mouth, but right. I love you, but I'm not responsible for your life choices. Fine, she spat. But don't come crying to us when you're all alone with nothing but your money to keep you company. As she stormed out, an elderly woman at the next table caught my eye. Good for you, dear, she said softly. I wish I'd had your courage with my own family years ago. My phone buzzed again. Mom. This time the message was different. How dare you send such a cold email? After all we've sacrificed for you. Your father and I went without so many times to give you opportunities, and this is how you repay us? By abandoning us when we need you most? You're no daughter of mine. Raylan read over my shoulder and whistled low. Wow, she went nuclear fast. They did make sacrifices for me, I admitted, guilt creeping in. Maybe I should— Stop right there. Raylan grabbed my hands. Yes, they made sacrifices. That's what parents are supposed to do. But you've more than repaid any debt, and now they're using those past sacrifices as weapons. It's emotional blackmail, pure and simple. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Setting boundaries is hard. But you know what's harder? Living the rest of your life as everyone's personal ATM. My phone lit up with another message, this time from Dad. Your mother's blood pressure is through the roof. If anything happens to her, it'll be your fault. Something inside me hardened. You're right, I told Raylan, turning off my phone. I'm done being manipulated. They want to play hardball? Fine. Let's see how they manage without their cash cow. That's my girl. Raylan raised her coffee cup. To boundaries and backbone. I clinked my cup against hers, ignoring the trembling in my hands. To freedom. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of the storm. Your numbers are impressive, Yasmin, but you're playing it too safe. Glenn leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against my business proposal. You've got the potential to be a major player in this market, not just another boutique consulting firm. I'd sought out Glenn's mentorship after realizing how much my family drama had held me back professionally. As one of the city's most respected business consultants, his advice was worth its weight in gold. What do you suggest? I asked, trying to ignore another call from an unknown number. Probably my mother using someone else's phone again. Expansion, strategic partnerships. You've built a solid foundation, but it's time to build the empire. He slid a business card across the desk. Start by meeting with Piper Hopkins. She's looking for partners in the tech sector. I nearly choked on my water. Piper Hopkins? She's my biggest competitor. Exactly. And she's either going to be your greatest ally or your worst nightmare. Choose which you prefer. Before I could respond, my office door burst open. Savannah stormed in, mascara streaking her cheeks. They're foreclosing on the house, she sobbed. Mom and Dad are going to be homeless, and it's all your fault. Glenn raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. I took a deep breath, remembering Raylan's advice about maintaining boundaries. This is a private business meeting, Savannah. You need to leave. No, not until you fix this. You have the money. We all know you do. I stood up, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Security, please escort my sister out. You heartless bitch. She lunged forward, but the security guard caught her arm. You'll regret this. Mom was right. Money has changed you. After she was gone, Glenn whistled low. Family business? Something like that. I straightened my jacket, trying to regain my composure. I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't be. I've seen worse. But this is exactly why you need to think bigger. He tapped the business card. Call Piper, today. 2 hours later, I sat across from Piper Hopkins in her sleek downtown office. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with a sharp gaze that seemed to cut right through me. Glenn speaks highly of you, she said, not bothering with small talk. Says you've got untapped potential. I'm not convinced. Excuse me? Your firm is successful, sure, but you're playing small, safe, like someone who's afraid to take real risks. She pulled up my company's financials on her tablet, or someone who's been dumping their profits into a black hole. My face burned. My financial decisions are none of your business. They are if we're going to be partners. She leaned forward. Let me be clear. I don't care about your family drama. I care about business. And right now, you're letting personal issues hold you back from something extraordinary. You don't know anything about me. I know you've been supporting your entire family for years. I know you've turned down major opportunities because you couldn't commit the capital. And I know you're finally ready to change all that. She smiled. Am I wrong? I stared at her, speechless. Here's my offer, she continued. We merge our consulting divisions. You head the combined operation. We expand into 3 new markets within 18 months. No more playing safe. No more holding back. And if I say no, Then I'll acquire your biggest clients one by one until your firm is nothing but a footnote in my company's history." She shrugged. "Your choice." My phone buzzed again. Another email from Mom, probably with more guilt and accusations. Without looking at it, I deleted it. "When do we start?" I asked. Piper's smile widened. "Now that's more like it." She pulled out a contract. "But first, let's talk numbers." The figures she proposed made my head spin. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was a chance to build something massive, something that would put me so far beyond my family's financial demands that they'd never be able to touch me again. "One condition," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. "I want complete autonomy over my division. No interference, no matter what personal drama might surface." Piper laughed. "Deal. Welcome to the big leagues, Yasmin." As I signed the contract, my phone lit up with a text from Dad. "Your mother's in the hospital. Stress-induced panic attack. Hope you're happy with yourself." I turned the phone face down without responding. For the first time in my life, I was choosing my future over their manipulation. "Ready to shake things up?" Piper asked, extending her hand. I took it firmly. More than ready. The game was changing, and this time, I was playing to win. The merger announcement made headlines in the local business press. I was reviewing the coverage when my office door slammed open, making me jump. "So this is why you abandoned us?" Mom stood in the doorway, brandishing a newspaper. "You were too busy making deals with our competitors?" I pressed the security button under my desk. "How did you get past reception?" "I told them I was your mother, which I am, though you seem to have forgotten that." She threw the newspaper on my desk. "Millions in new funding, and you can't spare a dime for your own family?" "Ma'am," my security guard appeared at the door. "You need to leave." "Don't you dare!" Mom's voice rose to a shriek. "I carried you for 9 months. I sacrificed everything for you, and now you're having me thrown out like garbage?" "Mrs. Owens," the guard stepped forward, "please don't make this difficult." "You're killing me, Yasmin." She clutched her chest dramatically. "The stress? The shame? Do you want me to die? Is that what you want?" I kept my voice steady. "What I want is for you to leave. Now." As security escorted her out, her wails echoed down the hallway. "My own daughter. My flesh and blood." I was still shaking when Piper walked in minutes later. "Interesting show in the lobby," she said dryly. "I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. Just handle it. We can't have family drama disrupting business." After she left, my phone rang. "Savannah." "Before you start," I said, answering, "I'm not discussing—" "Mom's in the emergency room again," she cut in. "Real this time, not just dramatics. Dad's with her. They're running tests." My stomach dropped. "What kind of tests?" "Cardiac. The doctor says stress is literally killing her. Are you happy now?" "That's not fair." "You know what's not fair? I lost my job last week. The startup I was working for went under. I can't make rent. Mom and Dad are losing their house, and you're out there making millions with some fancy merger." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Your financial problems are not my responsibility." "No? Then whose are they? Mom and Dad spent their retirement fund putting me through college. They remortgaged their house to help you start your business. That was their choice. And now you're choosing to let them suffer." She was crying now. "Mom might be dying, and you're sitting in your fancy office pretending we don't exist." "I'm not pretending anything. I'm setting boundaries." "Boundaries?" She laughed bitterly. "Is that what your rich friends call abandoning family? What happened to you, Yasmin? You used to care about someone besides yourself." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I still care, but I can't keep enabling— "Save it for your therapist. Just know that if anything happens to Mom, it's on you." The line went dead. I sat there, staring at my phone, until Raylan's call jolted me back to reality. "Your sister's posting about you on Facebook," she said without preamble. "It's getting ugly." I pulled up the post on my computer. There it was, complete with old family photos. "My sister made millions today while our mother lies in the hospital. Money truly changes people. Remember this post when she tries to pretend she's self-made." She built her success on our family's sacrifices and then abandoned us when we needed her most. The comments were worse. Old family friends expressing shock and disappointment. Relatives I hadn't seen in years calling me heartless. Even some business contacts weighing in with concerned messages. "It's a manipulation tactic," Raylan said firmly. "They're trying to shame you into compliance." "But what if they're right? What if I am being selfish?" "Stop. Remember why you started this. Remember the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety about their next financial emergency? You're not being selfish. You're being healthy." My office door opened again. This time it was Dad, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Raylan, I'll call you back," I said, hanging up. He stood there, hands in his pockets, shoulders slumped. "Your mother's asking for you." "Dad." I know. You're done with the financial support, but she's still your mother, Yasmin, and she's scared." I looked at the family photo on my desk, taken years ago, before money became the only language we spoke to each other in. I can't go back to how things were. "Nobody's asking you to." He sighed heavily. "But is this really how you want things to end? With security guards and Facebook posts and hospital visits?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with decades of complicated family history. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a message from Piper. "Meeting with major investors tomorrow. Family drama better be resolved by then." I looked at my father's tired face, at the newspaper announcing my success, at the angry Facebook posts. Something had to give. But what? "Your mother's spreading rumors that you embezzled money from the family," Raylan said, pacing my office. 3 clients called me asking if it's true. I looked up from the investor presentation I was reviewing. "She's what?" "Check your email. Someone forwarded me a message she sent to your entire extended family. It's creative." The email made my blood run cold. Mom had crafted an elaborate story about how I'd supposedly stolen Dad's inheritance money to start my business, complete with fake details about promised repayments and broken agreements. "This is insane," I muttered. "There was never any inheritance. Dad's parents died broke." "She's desperate," Raylan said, "and desperate people tell desperate lies." My phone lit up with Piper's name. "Speaking of desperate," I answered the call. "Hey, Piper. Care to explain why I'm getting calls about financial fraud?" Her voice was arctic. "This merger is hanging by a thread, Yasmin. It's not true. My mother. I don't care who's behind it. Fix it. Today." She hung up. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of my office window, watching the city bustle below. What am I supposed to do? Sue my own mother for defamation? "If necessary," Raylan said. "But first, we need to get ahead of this story." A knock at my door interrupted us. Glenn entered, looking grim. "I assume you've seen the emails," he said. "About the fictional inheritance theft?" "Yeah, I'm handling it." "No, about your sister's GoFundMe page." My stomach dropped. "Her what?" He pulled up the page on his tablet. There it was. "Help save our family home. My millionaire sister won't." Complete with childhood photos and a detailed account of how I'd abandoned our parents in their time of need. "It's gone viral in the local business community," Glenn said. "People are starting to ask questions about your character." "This is ridiculous." I stood up, anger finally overtaking shock. "They're trying to destroy everything I've built because I won't be their personal bank anymore?" "Actually," Raylan said slowly, "this might be exactly what we need." "What do you mean?" "You've been trying to handle this privately, and they're using that silence to control the narrative. Maybe it's time to tell your side of the story." Glenn nodded. "She's right. The investor meeting tomorrow, turn it into a press conference. Announce your new charitable foundation." "My what?" "Your foundation. The one you're going to create to help families develop financial literacy and independence. Show the world you're not against helping family. You're against enabling destructive patterns." I stared at them both. "That's actually brilliant." "It gets better," Raylan added. "We invite your family to the announcement. Let them try their dramatics in front of the press. See how that plays out." My phone buzzed with another message from Savannah. The GoFundMe's at $15,000. People deserve to know what kind of person you really are. Something hardened in my chest. Do it. Set up the press conference and make sure every local news outlet gets an invitation. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. By morning, the foundation paperwork was filed, the press release was drafted, and the conference room was ready. I stood at the podium, watching as reporters filed in, and then I saw them, Mom, Dad, and Savannah, slipping into the back row. Mom had clearly dressed for sympathy, wearing her church clothes and clutching a handkerchief. Ready? Piper appeared at my elbow. Born ready. I stepped up to the microphone, my voice steady. Thank you all for coming. Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Financial Freedom Foundation, dedicated to breaking the cycles of family financial dependence that trap so many in patterns of enabling and abuse. Mom's face went pale. This cause is deeply personal to me, I continued. For years, I watched my own success become a weapon used against me by those closest to me. I've been emotionally blackmailed, publicly slandered, and accused of theft, all for setting healthy boundaries. Reporters' heads swiveled toward my family. But this isn't about revenge. It's about breaking cycles. The foundation will provide education, counseling, and support for families struggling with financial codependence. Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do is say no. Savannah stood up, but Dad pulled her back down. Questions? I asked. A reporter raised his hand. Is it true your family started a GoFundMe claiming you abandoned them? I smiled. Why don't you ask them? They're sitting right there. All cameras turned to my family. Mom's face crumpled as reporters swarmed toward them. Well played, Piper whispered. The investors are impressed. I watched as my family fled the room, pursued by journalists. This isn't about impressing investors anymore. This is about taking back my story. And for the first time since this all began, I felt truly powerful. The press conference video has over 1 million views, Raylan announced, setting her laptop on my desk. And the comments? People are sharing their own stories of financial abuse. You've started a movement. I was about to respond when my office phone rang. The receptionist's voice was tense. Ms. Yasmin, your father's here. He says it's urgent. I glanced at Raylan, who nodded encouragingly. Send him up. Dad looked defeated as he entered, nothing like the intimidating figure of my childhood. We need to talk. About the GoFundMe? Or about Mom's inheritance lies? He sank into a chair. Your mother, she's not well, Yasmin. The doctors say her blood pressure's through the roof. She's talking about selling her wedding ring to pay bills. That's manipulation, and you know it. Maybe, he rubbed his face. But the foreclosure notice is real. We have 30 days. And you came here expecting... I don't know anymore. He looked around my office, taking in the success he'd never achieved. Your mother's always handled the money. I just worked and handed over my paycheck. Never questioned anything. That stops now, I said firmly. I'm done enabling, but I will help you help yourself. What does that mean? I pulled out a folder I'd prepared for exactly this conversation. The Foundation's first initiative, financial counseling, job placement assistance, debt management programs, but it comes with conditions. Such as? Mom has to attend therapy, you both need financial literacy classes, and the emotional manipulation stops, completely. He stared at the folder. She'll never agree. Then you have a choice to make, Dad. Stay trapped in her financial chaos or take control of your own life. His hands trembled as he reached for the folder. And Savannah? Same offer applies, but the money games end now. Your mother will see this as a betrayal. No, Dad. The betrayal was teaching me that love means emptying my bank account on demand. He stood slowly. I'll think about it. After he left, Raylan squeezed my shoulder. You okay? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Savannah. Dad told us about your offer. You're really going to make our parents jump through hoops for help? You've changed. I typed back. Yes, I have. I'm no longer financing anyone's bad decisions. The offer stands if you want real change. Her response was quick. Keep your charity. We don't need your condescending help. They'll come around, Raylan said, reading over my shoulder. Maybe, but I'm done waiting for their approval. My phone rang again. Piper this time. The charity gala's confirmed for next month. Every major player in the industry will be there. Your family drama better not overshadow it. It won't, I promised. In fact, I'm sending them invitations. Are you insane? Trust me. They need to see what they're up against. After hanging up, I drafted the invitations. Formal, professional, leaving no room for misinterpretation. You are cordially invited to the Financial Freedom Foundation's inaugural gala. You're playing with fire, Raylan warned. No, I'm taking control of the narrative. They want to make this public? Fine. Let's see how their victim story plays in front of 300 business leaders. The responses came within hours. From Mom, how dare you flaunt your wealth while we're losing everything? You'll regret this public humiliation. From Savannah, count me in. Can't wait to show everyone who you really are. From Dad, is the offer in the folder still open? I forwarded Dad's message to my foundation's counselor, then turned to Raylin. Want to help me pick out a gala dress? Something that screams successful and unbothered. Girl, I thought you'd never ask. As we headed out, I received one final text from Mom. You think you've won? Wait until the gala. If you want to play hardball, we can play hardball. Should we be worried? Raylin asked. I thought about the security measures already in place. The press invited, the live stream planned. No, for the first time, I'm not afraid of their threats. Because you're stronger? Because I finally realized something. Their power only worked when I gave them my fear, and I'm not afraid anymore. My phone buzzed with another message from Dad. I've signed up for the financial literacy class. Don't tell your mother. I smiled. Maybe there was hope after all, just not in the way I'd always imagined. The gala was 2 weeks away. Let them plot and scheme. This time, I'd be ready. The gala ballroom sparkled with success and influence. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests in my midnight blue gown, feeling powerful and prepared. Security guards were strategically positioned, and cameras live-streamed the event to thousands of online viewers. Quite a turnout, Piper said, appearing beside me. The governor just arrived. Any sign of my family? Your father's already inside, alone. She raised an eyebrow. Should we be worried about the others? Before I could answer, a commotion erupted at the entrance. Mom burst in, wearing her oldest church dress, Savannah right behind her. There she is, Mom's voice carried across the ballroom. My millionaire daughter who wants to teach us about money while we lose our home. Heads turned. Phones came out. Exactly as I'd expected. I approached them calmly, aware of all the cameras. Mom, Savannah, welcome. Your table is this way. Don't you dare act polite now! Mom's voice rose higher. Not after you humiliated us in the press. Mrs. Owens, one of the security guards stepped forward. Please lower your voice. Or what? You'll throw me out like my daughter threw us out of her life? I noticed Dad watching from across the room, looking pained, but staying put. Good. The counseling was working. Mom, I said quietly, you have 2 choices. Join the event respectfully or leave. There's no third option. Savannah pulled out her phone, clearly ready to record whatever came next. Go ahead, Mom. Show everyone who she really is. Who I really am. I turned to address the crowd of business leaders and journalists. Let me tell you who I really am. I'm someone who gave over $50,000 to my family last year alone, who paid mortgages, car payments, and credit card bills while postponing my own life goals. Mom's face reddened. How dare you? I'm someone, I continued, my voice steady, who finally realized that true love doesn't mean enabling destructive patterns. That's why this foundation exists, to help break the cycles of financial abuse that tear families apart. Liar! Mom reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers. I have proof of everything you stole from us. Security moved forward, but I held up my hand. Let her speak. Everyone should hear this. Mom waved the papers triumphantly. Bank statements, showing how she took your father's inheritance. The inheritance that never existed? Dad's voice cut through the tension. He walked over, standing beside me. Zlata, stop. There was no inheritance. You know that. Charles, don't you dare! I'm done lying, he said firmly. I'm done watching you manipulate our daughter. I'm done enabling you myself. The room was silent except for the click of cameras. The foundation helped me see the truth, Dad continued. I've started counseling, taken financial classes. For the first time in 40 years, I have my own bank account. Mom's hands shook. Traitor, you've turned against me too? No, Mom, I said softly. He's turned toward health, like I did, like you can too. Health? Savannah scoffed. Is that what you call abandoning your family? This foundation offers real help, I gestured around the room. Counseling, education, job training, everything you need to build financial independence. But you have to want to change. Change? Mom's voice turned vicious. You want change? How's this for change? She turned to the crowd. My daughter slept her way to the top. Security finally stepped in, gently but firmly escorting her toward the exit. Savannah followed, still filming, but her face showed the first traces of doubt. As they left, Piper touched my arm. That couldn't have gone better if we'd scripted it. She was right. Every moment had been captured, every lie exposed, every offer of real help documented. The Foundation's message couldn't have been clearer. Dad stayed by my side as I returned to hosting duties. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have stood up to her years ago. You're standing up now. That's what matters. My phone buzzed with a text from Savannah. Mom's crying in the car. Maybe you could send me information about those job training programs? Another buzz, this time from Mom. You'll regret this public humiliation. Mark my words. I showed the messages to Dad. Progress with one, at least. Your mother will never change, he said sadly. But I'm done enabling her, and I'm proud of you, sweetheart, for being stronger than I ever was. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of speeches, donations, and networking, but the real victory wasn't in the money raised or the connections made. It was in finally being free. As I took the stage for my closing speech, I saw Dad in the audience, sitting tall, looking hopeful. Behind him, through the windows, I caught a glimpse of Mom and Savannah still in the parking lot. The choice was theirs now, just like it had been mine. The autumn breeze rustled through the courtyard as I unlocked the door to the Foundation's new community center. The morning sun cast long shadows across the freshly painted walls and newly installed computers. Looking good in here, Raylan said, following me inside. Hard to believe this used to be your old office building. Seemed fitting. Turned the place where I enabled dependency into a space for teaching independence. My phone buzzed. A text from Savannah. Finished the job training program. Got 3 interviews next week. Thanks. She's really doing it. I showed Raylan the message. That's the 3rd program she's completed. And your mother? Before I could answer, the front door chimed. Dad walked in, looking healthier than I'd seen him in years. Ready for the group session? He'd become one of our most effective counselors, sharing his journey from financial enabling to independence. His divorce from Mom was almost final, and he'd moved into his own apartment for the first time in his life. How's Mom taking the divorce? I asked as we walked to the meeting room. About as well as you'd expect. Still claims I abandoned her. He sighed. But I'm not backing down this time. The meeting room was already filling up with people seeking help. I recognized the same desperate look I used to see in the mirror. People trapped in cycles of enabling, afraid to break free. Welcome, everyone, Dad began. Today we're talking about setting boundaries without guilt. The door burst open. Mom stood there, clutching her designer handbag, the last expensive thing I'd bought her. So this is where you've all been hiding, she said, her voice bitter. Having little meetings about what a terrible mother I am? Mom, this is a private session, I said firmly. You're welcome to schedule your own counseling appointment. Counseling? I don't need counseling. I need my family back. She turned to the group. Do you know what she did? She abandoned us when we needed her most, and now she's poisoned my husband and daughter against me too. One of the participants, an elderly woman, stood up. Ma'am, I used to be like you. Blamed my children for not supporting me, called them selfish for having boundaries. Want to know where it got me? Alone. until this foundation helped me understand that love isn't about money. Mom's face crumpled. But they're all I have. No, Mom, I said gently. We're not all you have. You have yourself. You have choices. You can choose to get help, to learn independence, to build real relationships not based on financial control. I don't know how, she whispered, and for the first time in my life, I heard real vulnerability in her voice. That's why we're here. Dad stepped forward, not to judge or blame, but to help break the cycle. The cycle you created, she snapped, but the words lacked their usual venom. Yes, he agreed. The cycle I helped create and maintain, but it stops now. I pulled out a folder, the same one I'd offered months ago. The offer still stands, Mom. Real help, real change, but you have to want it. She stared at the folder for a long moment. The room was silent, everyone watching this moment of truth. Finally, she reached for it with trembling hands. I don't know if I can change. That's okay, the elderly woman said kindly. None of us thought we could either. But we're here to support you. Mom sank into an empty chair, clutching the folder like a lifeline. Can I stay for the session? I caught Dad's eye. He nodded. Of course, I said. That's why we're here. As Dad resumed the session, my phone buzzed with a message from Piper. Merger's complete, empire's built. Ready for phase 2? I looked around the room, at Dad sharing his story, at Mom actually listening for once, at all the other families working to break free from toxic financial patterns. I typed back, already started. This is bigger than business now. Another text came in, this time from Savannah. Got the job. First real paycheck in years. Never knew independence could feel this good. I smiled, remembering my own journey to this moment. The fear, the guilt, the liberation, and finally, the peace of knowing I'd broken free. Mom caught my eye across the room. For the first time in forever, she didn't look angry or demanding. She looked lost. But maybe that was the first step, being lost before finding a new way forward. I sat down next to her as Dad continued speaking. She didn't say anything, but she didn't pull away either. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Some cycles take generations to truly break. But it was a beginning, a real one, built on truth instead of manipulation, strength instead of enabling. And for now, that was enough.
The day Edison left, I stood in our kitchen holding the mug he'd given me for our 10th anniversary, debating whether to smash it against the wall or pack it away with the rest of my shattered life. My name is Thea, and this is the story of how I turned betrayal into my greatest triumph. You can't be serious, I said, watching him stuff designer shirts into a leather weekend bag. 10 years of marriage, and you're walking away for someone you've known for 3 months? Edison didn't even look up. Thea, we both know this isn't working anymore. Savannah understands my ambitions. She sees the bigger picture. The bigger picture? I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. You mean her trust fund? He finally met my eyes. Don't be bitter. It doesn't suit you. What suits me then, Edison? Silence? Should I just smile and wave while you destroy everything we built together? The morning sun streamed through our bedroom window, highlighting the empty spaces where his things used to be. Photos removed from walls, dresser drawers hanging open, the walk-in closet half empty, like a mouth missing teeth. I never meant to hurt you, he said, zipping up his bag. Funny how people always say that after doing exactly what they knew would hurt someone the most. My phone buzzed. Harper. Girl, I'm outside. Just say the word, and I'll come up there and help you throw his stuff out the window. I'm fine, I texted back, even though I was anything but. Edison checked his watch, the Rolex I'd helped him pick out last Christmas. Savannah's waiting. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce papers. Of course she is. I followed him to the door. Does she know about the gambling debts? Or did you conveniently forget to mention those? He stiffened. That's none of her business. Yet somehow it was my business when I had to bail you out last year. I paid you back. Not everything, Edison. Not even close. He reached for the door handle, then paused. You'll be fine, Thea. You're strong. Always were. Maybe too strong. What's that supposed to mean? It means sometimes a man needs to feel needed. Savannah, she makes me feel that way. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. And how long until she realizes you're not the successful businessman you pretend to be? How long until the charm wears off and she sees what I've known for years, that you're just a man running from his own mediocrity? His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might argue, but instead, he opened the door and walked out without another word. I waited until I heard the elevator ding before sliding down against the wall, the tears finally coming. Harper found me there 10 minutes later, still clutching that stupid anniversary mug. "Oh, honey," she said, sitting beside me. "Let it out." "I gave him everything," I sobbed. "My time, my money, my dreams. I put my writing career on hold to support his ventures. And for what?" Harper wrapped an arm around me. "For a lesson. A painful one, but a lesson nonetheless." "What lesson?" "That you're worth more than being someone's backup plan. That it's time to focus on your dreams for a change." I wiped my eyes, looking at the manuscript pages scattered across my desk in the corner. My unfinished novel, gathering dust while I'd played supportive wife to a man who'd never truly supported me. "You know what the worst part is?" I said, standing up. "He thinks I'm going to fall apart without him. They both probably think that." Harper stood too, a fierce look in her eyes. "Then prove them wrong." I walked to my desk and picked up the manuscript, feeling its weight in my hands. "Oh, I will. But not just for revenge. I'm done living in his shadow." "That's my girl. What's the first step?" I grabbed my laptop and opened a new document. "I'm going to write a story, but not just any story. I'm going to write our story with a twist they'll never see coming." Harper grinned. "Now that sounds like a bestseller in the making." Looking at the blank page, I felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there, but now it had purpose. Edison thought he was walking away with everything, but he'd left behind the one thing that would ultimately be his undoing: my voice. I began to type, the words flowing easier than they ever had before. The day he left, I realized that some love stories aren't about love at all. Sometimes they're about power, and sometimes, just sometimes, they're about revenge. 3 months after Edison left, I sat across from Milo in his corner office at Summit Publishing, watching him read the first chapters of my manuscript. Each time he turned a page, my heart skipped a beat. "Well?" I asked when he finally looked up. He removed his reading glasses and leaned back in his chair. "This is raw, powerful, nothing like the romance novels you used to pitch me." "Is that a good thing?" "It's a very good thing, Thea." He tapped the manuscript. "This has teeth. The protagonist's journey from betrayal to self-discovery. It's compelling, personal even." I shifted in my seat. "Maybe a little too personal?" "That's exactly why it works." Milo stood and walked to his window overlooking Manhattan. "Readers want authenticity. They want to feel something real." "So you'll publish it?" He turned, a smile playing at his lips. "Better. I want to fast-track it. This could be huge with the right marketing." My phone buzzed. Harper checking in. I'd barely pressed ignore when Milo's assistant knocked and entered. "Your next appointment is here," she said. "Give me 5 minutes," Milo replied, then faced me again. "There's just one thing. The ending feels unfinished." "I'm still working on it," I admitted. "I know where I want it to go, but I'm not quite there yet." "Take your time. Sometimes the best endings reveal themselves when we least expect them." He walked me to the door. "Oh, and Thea? You're coming to the writer's retreat next weekend, right?" "I wasn't invited." "You are now. You'll meet some incredible authors there, including Athena Hughes. I think you two would hit it off." That evening, I met Harper at our favorite wine bar to celebrate. She raised her glass as I told her about the meeting. "To karma finally working in your favor," she toasted. "It's not about karma," I said, though I couldn't help smiling. It's about taking control of my own story. Speaking of stories, Harper leaned forward. Have you heard about Edison and his trophy wife? I took a long sip of wine. I try not to keep tabs on them. Well, maybe you should. Word is, they're having problems. Apparently, Savannah's family isn't too happy about his financial situation. Harper, I know. You're above all that. But admit it. It feels a little good knowing their perfect life isn't so perfect. Before I could respond, a familiar voice called out, Thea, is that you? I turned to see Connor Douglas, looking as successful as ever in his tailored suit. We'd met at several of Edison's business functions years ago, but hadn't spoken since the divorce. Mind if I join you ladies for a minute? He asked. Harper kicked out a chair. Please do. We're celebrating. Oh, what's the occasion? Thea just landed a book deal. A big one. Connor's eyes lit up. Finally, I always knew you were the talented one in that marriage. No offense. None taken. I laughed. What brings you here? Meeting with investors across the street, but this is better. He flagged down a server. Another round on me. We need to properly celebrate. As the evening wore on, I found myself relaxing more than I had in months. Connor asked thoughtful questions about my book, and actually listened to the answers. When he finally had to leave, he handed me his business card. I know some people in publishing marketing, he said. Let me know if you ever want to discuss promotion strategies. After he left, Harper gave me a knowing look. Well. Stop it. He's just being friendly. Friendly is saying hello. That man stayed for 2 hours talking about your book. I tucked his card into my purse. Maybe he just appreciates good literature. Maybe he appreciates more than that. Harper's expression turned serious. You know it's okay to move on, right? Edison doesn't own your future. I know. I stared into my wine glass. But right now, I need to focus on finishing this book. The ending has to be perfect. Any ideas yet? I thought about Milo's words about endings revealing themselves. Actually, yes. But I'll need your help with something at the book launch. I'm in. Whatever you need. Don't agree so quickly. What I have in mind, it's either going to be brilliant or completely backfire. Harper reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Either way, I've got your back. Now tell me everything. As I outlined my plan, I felt a familiar rush of excitement. The same feeling I got when writing a particularly good scene. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's happiness. Sometimes it's about reclaiming your own and making sure they have a front row seat to watch it happen. And now, debuting at number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list, Milo's voice boomed through the speakerphone as I paced my living room. Before he could finish, I screamed, Number 5? Are you serious? As a heart attack, he laughed. Congratulations, Thea. You're officially a best-selling author. Harper, who'd been perched on my couch, jumped up and hugged me. I told you it would be huge. After ending the call, I collapsed onto the couch, still dazed. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, congratulatory messages, interview requests, and social media mentions. This calls for champagne, Harper declared, heading to my kitchen. The expensive stuff you've been saving. It doesn't feel real, I said, scrolling through the messages. 6 months ago, I was just Edison's ex-wife. Now you're Thea, best-selling author. Harper returned with 2 glasses. And speaking of Edison, have you seen the reviews? I grabbed my laptop. The top review on Amazon read, A searing exploration of betrayal and redemption. The author's portrayal of Marcus, the self-serving husband, feels so authentic, you'll swear she's writing from experience. They have no idea, I laughed. Oh, but they will, Harper winked. Eventually. My phone buzzed again. Connor this time. Free for lunch tomorrow? Want to discuss some marketing ideas for the book? Harper read the text over my shoulder. 3rd lunch meeting this month? Still just discussing marketing? Yes, actually. He's been incredibly helpful with publicity. And incredibly interested in spending time with you. Before I could protest, my doorbell rang. A delivery man stood there with an enormous bouquet of roses. "Congratulations on the bestseller list," the card read. "Looking forward to lunch tomorrow. Connor." Harper raised her eyebrows. "Just business, huh?" Later that week, I met Athena for coffee. We'd grown close since the writer's retreat, and she'd become something of a mentor. "The success is wonderful," she said, stirring her latte. "But how are you handling everything else?" "You mean the Edison situation?" She nodded. "Success is the best revenge, they say. But revenge can be exhausting." "I'm not," I started, then sighed. "Okay, maybe part of me enjoys knowing he'll see my name on that bestseller list." "Of course you do. You're human." She leaned forward. "But don't let it consume you. I've seen too many writers get stuck in their pain, unable to move forward." "Is that why you're concerned about my launch party plan?" "I just want to make sure you've thought it through. Public humiliation has a way of backfiring." "It's not about humiliation," I insisted. "It's about truth, about taking back my narrative." Athena's expression softened. "Then make sure that's what comes across. Speaking of which, how's the final chapter coming along?" "Almost done. I'm meeting Connor for lunch to discuss the ending." "Connor?" She smiled knowingly. "The businessman who's been helping with marketing." "Not you too. Harper's already planning our wedding. I'm just saying, it's nice to see you opening up again. Speaking of which..." She pulled out her phone and showed me a recent social media post. It was a photo of Edison and Savannah at a charity gala, but their smiles looked strained. The caption mentioned trouble in paradise. "I don't want to know," I said, pushing the phone away. "Yes, you do, and that's okay. But remember, the best characters don't waste time plotting revenge. They're too busy building something better." At lunch with Connor the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about Athena's words. We sat at our usual corner table, marketing materials spread between us. "These numbers are incredible," he said, reviewing the sales reports. "Have you thought about doing a book tour?" "Milo's working on it. But first, the launch party." Connor set down the papers. "About that, are you sure about inviting Edison?" "How did you..." "Harper might have mentioned it. She's worried about you." I pushed my salad around my plate. "I know what I'm doing." "I'm sure you do. But as someone who cares about you..." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Just be careful." The warmth of his touch sent a flutter through my stomach. "I thought we were keeping this professional." "Is that what you want?" Before I could answer, my phone chimed with an email notification. My heart stopped when I saw the sender. Edison Foster. "Thea," it read. "We need to talk. It's important. Please." I showed Connor the email. His jaw tightened. "What are you going to do?" I thought about the launch party, about my carefully laid plans, about the ending I'd been crafting. "I'm going to finish what I started." But as I said it, I wondered if I was really ready for what that meant. I chose the same coffee shop where Edison had first told me about Savannah for our meeting. Petty? Maybe. But if he wanted to talk, we'd do it on my terms. He arrived 15 minutes late, looking nothing like the polished businessman who'd left me a year ago. His designer suit was wrinkled, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "You look terrible," I said as he sat down. "Thanks for meeting me." He attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've been reading your book." "And?" "It's revealing. Marcus seems familiar." Any resemblance to real persons is purely coincidental." I quoted the disclaimer from my book's copyright page. "What do you want, Edison?" He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. "Savannah left me." "I'm sorry to hear that." I wasn't. "She found out about the gambling, the debts, everything." He leaned forward. "I need your help, Thea." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You can't be serious." "I know I have no right to ask, but you're the only one who really knows me, who understands." "Understands what? How it feels to be betrayed? To have everything you believed in turn out to be a lie?" "I made mistakes. Horrible mistakes." His voice cracked. But I'm trying to make things right. The casino's threatening to go public with my debts. If that happens, I'll lose everything. Like I lost everything? You didn't lose everything. Look at you, best-selling author, successful, respected. No thanks to you. A waitress approached. Edison ordered coffee with trembling hands. How much? I asked after she left. 200,000. I nearly choked on my tea. Are you out of your mind? I can pay you back. I just need time to… Like you paid me back last time? I'm not your personal bank anymore, Edison. He reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. Please, Thea, I know I don't deserve your help, but… You're right, you don't. I stood up, gathering my things. Then I paused, an idea forming. Actually, there might be one way I can help. Hope flickered in his eyes. Anything. Come to my book launch party next week, as my special guest. Your launch party? I'm doing a reading, something new, not from the published book. I think you'll find it interesting. And if I come, you'll help with the money? I smiled, channeling the same false warmth he'd once used on me. Let's just say it could be very beneficial for both of us. Later that evening, I met Harper at her apartment, pacing as I told her about the meeting. He fell for it? She asked, pouring wine. Completely. He's desperate enough to believe anything. And you're sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back. My phone buzzed. Connor calling. I ignored it. Still avoiding him? Harper asked. I need to focus. I can't have any distractions right now. He's worried about you. We all are. She sat beside me on the couch. Revenge might feel good in the moment, but this isn't just about revenge. I pulled out my laptop, opening the document containing my new pages. Listen to this. I read her the passage I planned to share at the launch. A devastating exposé of a man's descent into addiction and deceit, thinly veiled as fiction, but laden with details only Edison would recognize. Damn, Harper whispered when I finished. That's brutal. It's truth, his truth, the one he's been hiding from everyone. And you're really going to read this in front of all those people? Industry professionals? His colleagues? Why not? He didn't care about humiliating me when he left. Why should I protect him? My phone buzzed again. Connor's third call of the day. Because you're better than that, Harper said softly. And because I think you're using this revenge plot to avoid dealing with other feelings. What other feelings? She nodded at my still buzzing phone. The ones you're developing for someone else. Someone who actually deserves your attention. I silenced the phone. I can't think about that right now. The launch is in 6 days. Everything has to be perfect. And after? What then? I stared at the manuscript pages, at the words that would destroy what remained of Edison's reputation. Then I'll be free. But as I said it, I wondered who I was really trying to free myself from. Edison, or the angry, hurt woman I'd become since he left. Your choice, Harper said, raising her glass. Just remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting happy. I touched my glass to hers, but didn't drink. In 6 days, I'd have my moment of triumph. I just had to ignore the growing voice inside that questioned whether triumph and revenge were really the same thing. You're making a mistake, Athena said, watching me rehearse my reading in the empty bookstore after hours. This isn't you. How would you know? I snapped, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry, I'm just… nervous or guilty? I set down the manuscript pages. The bookstore's dim evening lighting cast long shadows across the rows of chairs we'd arranged for tomorrow's launch. Both, I admitted, but I can't back out now. My phone lit up with another text from Connor. Please call me, we need to talk. Athena noticed. Still avoiding him? I'm not avoiding, I'm focusing. On destroying your ex-husband instead of building something new? She picked up my manuscript. May I? I nodded, and she began reading aloud. The man who stood before me was a hollow shell of deception, Each lie another card in his house of addiction. I watched him crumble, knowing my words would be the final breath that scattered his carefully constructed facade. "Stop," I whispered. "Why? Isn't this what you want everyone to hear tomorrow?" "It's the truth." "No," she said, setting down the pages. "It's pain masquerading as truth. There's a difference." The bookstore's door chimed. Harper walked in, carrying coffee and a concerned expression. "How's the rehearsal going?" "It's not," Athena answered. "She's too good a writer to go through with this." Harper handed me a coffee. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Athena said, "that real writers don't use their gift to destroy. They use it to illuminate, to heal, to transform." "Edison deserves," I started. "What anyone deserves isn't your responsibility," Harper cut in. "But what you deserve is." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Edison. "Looking forward to tomorrow. Thank you for giving me a chance." The message made my stomach turn. He thinks I'm going to help him, that this is some kind of reconciliation. "And that doesn't bother you?" Athena asked. "Of course it bothers me. Everything about this bothers me." I paced between the chairs. "But you didn't see him at that coffee shop. So smug, thinking he could just walk back into my life and ask for money like nothing happened." "So this is about money?" Harper asked. "No, it's about control," Athena finished. "But control and power aren't the same thing. True power comes from moving forward, not looking back." I sank into one of the chairs. "I've worked so hard on this ending." "Maybe it's the wrong ending," Harper suggested. "Maybe there's a better one." "Like what?" Athena sat beside me. "Like showing everyone, that your story isn't about him at all, that he's just a chapter, not the whole book." My phone lit up again. "Connor, I'll be at the launch tomorrow, whether you want me there or not. Because I believe in you, even if you're not ready to believe in us." Harper read the message over my shoulder. "Now that's a man worth writing about." "I can't think about Connor right now." "Why not?" Athena asked. "Because he makes you feel something other than anger?" "Because I'm scared." The words echoed through the empty bookstore. "Because what if I let go of this anger, and there's nothing left?" Harper hugged me. "Oh, honey, there's so much left. Your talent, your success, your friends who love you, and maybe someone who could love you the right way if you let him." "The launch is tomorrow," I said weakly. "Everything's planned." Athena picked up my manuscript again. "Plans can change. Endings can be rewritten. That's the beauty of being the author. You get to choose how the story ends. But the invitations, the press, will love whatever you give them," Harper said, "because you're a brilliant writer who doesn't need scandal to sell books." I looked at my phone, at Connor's message, then at the manuscript pages that had consumed me for weeks. The words suddenly felt hollow, vindictive in a way that made me ashamed. "I need to write something new," I said. "Something true." Athena smiled. "You have all night." "And we have coffee," Harper added. "And tomorrow," I said, opening my laptop, "I'll tell a different story." As I began to type, I felt the anger that had driven me for so long begin to fade, replaced by something lighter, cleaner. Edison would still be there tomorrow, expecting one story, but getting another. And maybe that was the best revenge of all, showing him that he no longer had the power to define my narrative. My phone buzzed one more time. I picked it up and finally, after days of avoiding it, pressed call. "Connor? Can you come to the bookstore? I could use your help with something." The bookstore buzzed with anticipation. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and spilling into the aisles. Milo worked the room, shaking hands with industry professionals, while Harper directed latecomers to any remaining spaces. 5 minutes, Athena said, squeezing my arm. "How are you feeling?" I clutched my new pages, still warm from the printer. Like I might throw up. "You won't." She peeked through the staff room door. "Oh, Edison's here, front row, looking nervous." "Good. I smoothed my dress. He should be. Thea! Connor appeared behind me, handsome in his dark suit. Ready? No. Yes. Maybe. I turned to face him. Thank you for staying up all night helping me with this. He smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Thank you for finally answering my calls. About that, I started, but Milo stuck his head in. We're ready for you. The walk to the podium felt like miles. Edison sat exactly where Athena had said, his expression a mixture of hope and anxiety. Beside him, an empty chair, Savannah's absence speaking volumes. Good evening, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. Thank you all for coming. The crowd quieted. In the back, I spotted Connor giving me a thumbs up. Many of you have read my novel, An Unworthy Muse. You've followed Sarah's journey through betrayal and redemption. Tonight, I want to share something new. A story about what happens after revenge stops being the answer. Edison shifted in his seat. I saw confusion replace hope in his eyes. This piece is called Forward, I continued. It's about letting go, not because someone deserves forgiveness, but because we deserve peace. I began to read. The words flowed differently than the angry exposition I'd originally planned. Instead of exposing Edison's secrets, I told the story of a woman who discovered that her greatest victory wasn't in destroying her ex-husband's life, but in building her own. As I read, I watched Edison's expression change. Recognition, shame, understanding. But I kept my focus on the story, on the truth I'd finally allowed myself to tell. And in the end, I concluded, she realized that some chapters need to close quietly, without fanfare or destruction, because the best revenge isn't a spectacular ending, it's a beautiful beginning. The room erupted in applause. Through tears I hadn't realized were falling. I saw Harper beaming, Athena nodding proudly, and Connor looking at me like I'd hung the moon. Edison stood up. For a moment, I thought he might leave, but instead, he walked to the podium. Thea, he said softly, so only I could hear, I don't deserve your mercy. This isn't about what you deserve, I replied. It's about what I deserve. The money is not my problem anymore. I stepped back. Good luck, Edison. I mean that. He nodded, understanding the dismissal, and walked out of the bookstore. As the door closed behind him, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't even known I was carrying. The signing line stretched for hours. Reader after reader shared their own stories of betrayal and healing, each one reminding me why I'd chosen to change my ending. That was incredible, Milo said during a brief break. Raw, honest, powerful. The press is going to love it. More importantly, Harper added, you loved it. I could tell. Finally, as the last readers left and the staff began cleaning up, Connor approached the signing table. Do I get a signed copy too? You helped write it, I smiled. If anything, I should be asking for your autograph. I'd rather ask for dinner. He leaned against the table. Now that you're not avoiding me anymore. I wasn't avoiding you. I was processing, focusing, running scared. All of the above. He took my hand. And now, I looked around the bookstore, at the empty chairs and scattered bookmarks, at the space where Edison had sat and then left, taking our past with him. Now I think I'm ready for that beautiful beginning I wrote about. Good, he said, pulling me to my feet, because I know this great Italian place around the corner, and I kissed him. Right there, surrounded by books and possibility, I finally let myself feel something other than anger. Something that felt a lot like hope. Or we could just do that, he whispered when we broke apart. Harper whistled from across the room. Athena slow clapped. And I laughed, really laughed, for what felt like the first time in years. Come on, I said, gathering my things. I'm starving, and I have a feeling this is going to be a long dinner. The best stories usually are, he replied, taking my hand. 2 weeks after the launch, I sat in Milo's office, watching him read the morning's paper. The headline made my stomach flip. Local author's launch takes unexpected turn. a story of redemption over revenge. They love it, Milo said, tossing the paper aside. Every major outlet is talking about your brave choice to share a message of healing instead of exposing your ex-husband. They don't know I almost did the opposite. That's what makes it authentic. He leaned forward. Speaking of authentic, have you seen this? He slid his tablet across the desk. On the screen was a social media post from Savannah. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who choose peace over vengeance. Thank you, the author, for showing me that. Well, that's unexpected, I said. Not really. Word is she's writing her own book about toxic relationships and financial abuse. Good for her. You mean that, don't you? Milo studied my face. You've changed. Before I could respond, his assistant knocked. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. She handed Milo her phone. His eyes widened. Turn on the news. Now. The office TV flickered to life, showing a breaking news report. Prominent businessman Edison Foster arrested for embezzlement and gambling fraud. Oh my God, I whispered. Sources say Foster had been stealing from his investment clients to cover massive gambling debts. His recent attempt to secure emergency funds. My phone exploded with notifications. Harper, are you watching this? Athena, call me ASAP. And Connor, coming to get you, don't watch alone. I need to go, I told Milo. Of course, but Thea? He caught my arm. The press will want your comment. Think carefully about what you say. I found Connor waiting in the lobby. Without a word, he pulled me into a hug. You okay? He asked into my hair. I don't know what I am. I pulled back to look at him. I could have exposed him at the launch. Maybe if I had. Then his victims would still be victims, just with a different story. This way, they get justice. My phone rang. Edison's lawyer. I declined the call. Let's get out of here, Connor said. Harper and Athena are waiting at your place. We found them in my apartment, pizza and wine already laid out. The news played silently on TV, showing Edison being led into a police car. I ordered your favorite, Harper said, pulling me into a hug. Extra mushrooms, no judgment. Have you heard from him? Athena asked. I shook my head. His lawyer called, but nothing. Harper interrupted. You're not involved in this. You chose to walk away, remember? Actually, Connor pulled out his phone. The DA's office called me. They want to know if you'll testify about the money he borrowed from you during your marriage. What? Why you? Because, he looked slightly embarrassed. Before I started my own company, I worked in financial crimes prosecution. They remembered me. Why didn't you tell me? It never came up. And then, after the launch, it didn't seem important. My phone buzzed again. Another news outlet requesting comment. What should I do? I asked the room. Athena took my hand. What does your heart tell you? That I'm glad I didn't expose him at the launch. That would have been about revenge. This is about justice. Then there's your answer, Connor said. Help the investigation if they need you, but don't let it consume you. You've got better things to focus on. Like your book tour, Harper added. And your new manuscript, said Athena. And maybe, Connor smiled, pulling me close, planning our first real vacation together? I looked at him in surprise. Vacation? I was thinking Italy. You mentioned wanting to set your next book there, Harper squealed. Athena raised her wine glass, and despite the chaos unfolding on the silent TV screen, I felt at peace. I'd like that, I said. A lot. Later, after Harper and Athena left, Connor and I stood on my balcony, watching the city lights. You know what's funny? I said. I spent so long plotting the perfect revenge, but in the end, you chose to be better, and karma took care of the rest. My phone lit up with one final message, from Edison. You were right, about everything. I'm sorry. I showed Connor the text, then deleted it without responding. Some chapters don't need a response to be finished. So, I said, turning to face him, tell me more about Italy. As he described the small towns and quiet beaches he wanted to show me, I realized that the best endings aren't the ones we carefully plot. They're the ones that surprise us with their perfect simplicity. The Italian sun warmed my face as I sat at the small cafe overlooking the Amalfi Coast. My laptop screen showed the final page of my new manuscript, cursor blinking after the last sentence. Still staring at it? Connor set down 2 espressos and kissed my temple. I can't decide if it's really finished. What does your gut say? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with Harper's face on a video call. Show me everything, she demanded as soon as I answered. The view, the food, the gorgeous Italian men. Wait, sorry, Connor. I turned the phone to show her the coastline. How's the book tour going? Incredible. Your readers are obsessed with the new ending. One woman drove 6 hours just to tell you how your launch speech changed her life. Speaking of changes, Connor said, should we tell her? Harper's eyes narrowed. Tell me what? I held up my left hand, showing the vintage ring Connor had given me last night, right as the sun set over Positano. Her scream made several nearby diners jump. Finally! Wait until I tell Athena. When's the wedding? Where's the wedding? Please say Italy. We haven't planned anything yet, I laughed. We're still enjoying this moment. Well, enjoy faster. I need details to live on while you're gone. After we hung up, I returned to my manuscript. Connor read over my shoulder. She realized that true power wasn't in the magnitude of her revenge, but in the depth of her healing. That's the last line, I said. Do you think it works? I think it's perfect. He sat beside me. Just like your answer last night. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Edison Foster pleads guilty, faces 10 years. Below it was a message from Milo. Your new manuscript better be as good as the last one. No pressure. Should we head back? Connor asked. Face reality? I closed my laptop. This is reality. Right here, right now. Even with everything happening back home? Especially with everything happening back home. I took his hand. Edison's story is ending. Ours is just beginning. Speaking of beginnings, he pulled out a small notebook. I may have some ideas for the wedding. What do you think about that little church we saw yesterday? My phone rang again, Savannah's name flashing on the screen. We'd spoken briefly after Edison's arrest, a surprisingly civil conversation about healing and moving forward. Take it, Connor said. I'll order more coffee. Thea, Savannah said when I answered. I wanted you to hear it from me first. I'm publishing my story. Ha, I know. Milo told me. It's not what you think. It's about redemption, about both of us finding our way after Edison. I'd like your blessing. I watched Connor at the counter, charming the barista with his terrible Italian. You have it. Just be honest. That's all I want to be anymore. She paused. Thank you, Thea, for showing me there's life after betrayal. After we hung up, I opened my laptop one last time, adding a dedication page. To those who taught me that the best stories aren't about getting even, but getting free. And to C, who showed me that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Connor returned with fresh coffee and cannoli. Perfect ending? Perfect everything. I closed the laptop decisively. Now, about that church. Actually, he grinned, I have another idea. What if we got married right here? Small ceremony, just our closest friends. Harper can plan it from New York. Athena can officiate. You've given this some thought. I've given you a lot of thought. He took my hand. What do you say? I looked out at the coastline, at the life we were building, at the future that looked nothing like the revenge fantasy I'd once crafted. I say yes. To all of it. My phone lit up one final time. A message from Harper to our group chat. Wedding planning starts now. No excuses about time zones. Connor laughed. Should we tell her we're thinking next week? Let's wait until she's had her coffee. I stood, pulling him up with me. Right now, I want to walk down to that little church again. As we strolled through the narrow streets, hand in hand, I thought about endings and beginnings, about revenge and redemption, about the story I'd thought I needed to tell versus the one that actually needed telling. "What are you thinking about?" Connor asked. "About how sometimes the best plot twists are the ones we never see coming." He squeezed my hand. "Like falling in love with your marketing consultant? Like finding yourself when you stop looking for revenge?" I stopped, pulling him close. "Like realizing your happy ending was waiting all along." The church bells rang in the distance, and I knew, finally, completely, that this was the ending I'd been meant to write all along.
The day I lost my bakery was the day I stopped being the dutiful daughter-in-law. I remember standing in my kitchen, watching Eliza's perfectly manicured fingers slide the contract across my granite countertop, like she was dealing cards in a rigged game. "It's for the best, dear," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "The family business needs to be properly managed. I'm Tessa, and for the past 8 years, I've poured my heart and soul into Sweet Endings Bakery. Every morning at 4 a.m., I'd unlock those doors, fire up the ovens, and create magic with flour and sugar. My regulars became family, and my recipes won local awards, but none of that mattered to Eliza. "Mom, please," Neil said, shifting uncomfortably beside me. "Can't we discuss this another time?" "There's nothing to discuss," Eliza replied, tapping the paper with her blood-red nail. "The bakery needs proper oversight. Tessa clearly can't handle it alone." My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the counter. "I've doubled our profits in the last 2 years. The business is thriving." "Oh, sweetie," Eliza's laugh felt like ice down my spine. "Those little cupcakes you make are charming, but this is about legacy. The Holland family name deserves better than a small-town bakery." I looked at Neil, silently pleading for support. He avoided my eyes, suddenly fascinated by the floor tiles I'd handpicked when we renovated. "Neil," I whispered, "please." He finally met my gaze, his face twisted with guilt. "Maybe Mum's right, Tess. The corporate oversight could help us expand." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. 8 years of marriage, and he was choosing his mother over me. Again. "Sign it, dear," Eliza pushed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Danielle at the bakery. "Boss, the wedding consultation's here early. Should I start without you?" That message was my lifeline. "I have to go," I said, grabbing my keys. "There's a client waiting." "This needs to be handled today," Eliza called after me. "The lawyers are expecting the paperwork." I was already halfway out the door, but I heard Neil's defeated sigh. "I'll talk to her, Mum." At the bakery, I threw myself into work, decorating a 3-tier wedding cake, while Danielle handled consultations. My hands stayed steady even as my world crumbled. Years of early mornings, missed holidays, and sacrificed weekends, all about to be stolen by my mother-in-law's ambition. "You okay, boss?" Danielle asked, closing up that evening. "You've been quiet all day." "I'm fine," I lied, wiping down the display case. "Just tired." Later that night, I sat at my desk reviewing the contract Eliza had left behind. The terms were brutal. I'd retain a small ownership percentage, but all control would transfer to Holland Enterprises. My recipes, my staff, my dream, all under Eliza's thumb. Neil found me there at midnight. "Babe, come to bed. We can figure this out tomorrow." "Figure what out?" I asked, not looking up. "How to surrender everything I've built." "Mom's just trying to help. Stop." I finally faced him. "Your mother has never tried to help me. She's trying to control me, like she controls you." His face hardened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When was the last time you made a decision without consulting her?" The silence was deafening. My phone lit up with an email notification, my monthly business newsletter. I opened it absently, needing a distraction from the tension, and there it was. The headline that changed everything. Local real estate market crashes, historic properties hit hardest. I clicked through, scanning until I found what I needed. Eliza's precious historic mansion, her pride and joy, had lost nearly half its value. the same house she'd bragged about at every family gathering, the one she'd leveraged to start Holland Enterprises. Neil was still talking, defending his mother, but I barely heard him. My mind was racing, pieces falling into place. I knew Eliza's type. All image, no substance. The crash would devastate her, but she'd never admit it. She'd keep up appearances until the last possible moment. I looked at my husband, still making excuses for his mother, and made my decision. If Eliza wanted to play games with my livelihood, I'd show her exactly how it felt to lose everything you love. "You're right," I said, cutting off his rambling. "I'll sign the papers tomorrow." Neil's relief was painful to watch. "Really? You mean it?" "Of course." I smiled, thinking of the separate account I'd maintained since marriage, my safety net. After all, it's what's best for the family, right? Little did they know, I was about to redefine exactly what that meant. "You did what?" Sophia nearly choked on her coffee, her eyes wide with disbelief. We were sitting in her small law office, where I'd gone straight after signing over my bakery that morning. "I signed it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But I have a plan. A plan that doesn't involve murdering your mother-in-law, I hope." She was only half joking. "Better." I pulled out my phone and showed her the real estate listings I'd been researching. "I'm going to buy her house." Sophia stared at me for a long moment. "Okay, you need to back up and explain everything." I told her about discovering Eliza's financial vulnerability, about the market crash, and my suspicions that she was using my bakery to shore up her failing empire. "That's why she was so aggressive about getting control," I explained. "She needs the bakery's steady income to keep up appearances." Sophia leaned back in her chair, processing. "And you're sure about this? Her son George let it slip last week that she's been trying to refinance. He thought I knew already. Being family and all." I couldn't help the bitter laugh. "Eliza's been hiding it well, but she's desperate. Even so, buying her house, that's exactly what she deserves." I finished my now cold coffee. "Can you help me?" Sophia's expression shifted from concern to determination. "Actually, I know someone who might be perfect for this. Let me call Meki." 20 minutes later, a tall man in a sharp suit walked in. "Sophia said it's urgent." He extended his hand. "I'm Meki. Tessa, and yes, I need to buy a house without the owner knowing it's me." His eyebrows shot up, but he sat down without comment. As I explained the situation, he took careful notes. "It's doable," he said finally. "We can set up an LLC to make the purchase. My brother Jake is a real estate agent. He can handle the actual transaction. Eliza won't know you're involved until after the sale is complete." "Perfect." I felt the first real smile in days spread across my face. "How soon can we start?" "I can have the paperwork ready tomorrow, but Tessa," he paused, looking serious, "this is going to get messy. Are you prepared for that?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Neil. "Mum wants us over for dinner Sunday. Says she has big plans for the bakery." "I'm more than prepared," I said, showing them the message. "I'm counting on it." Later that afternoon, I was back at the bakery, now technically working for Holland Enterprises. Danielle was decorating cookies, shooting me worried glances. "You seem different today," she said finally. "Good different, but scary different." I was about to respond when George walked in. Neil's younger brother had always been the family rebel, keeping his distance from Eliza's controlling nature. "Hey, sis." He grabbed a cookie from the display case. "Heard about the big change. You okay?" "Just peachy," I replied, watching him carefully. "How's your mom? Still trying to sell that big old house?" "God, I wish," he snorted. "She's too proud to admit she can't afford it anymore. The property taxes alone are killing her, but heaven forbid she downsize. That must be stressful for her." "Yeah, well," he shrugged, "maybe if she focused more on fixing her own problems instead of controlling everyone else's lives." After he left, Danielle turned to me. "Did you see that glint in your eye? What are you planning? Let's just say changes are coming." I started gathering my things. "Can you handle closing tonight? I have some appointments to make. That evening, I met with Miki and his brother Jake at their office. Jake had already pulled the property records and recent market analyses. The timing's perfect, he said, spreading out documents. The market crash has scared off most buyers, and the house has been quietly listed for months. We can probably get it for well below asking price. And you're sure this will work? I asked, looking at the complex legal documents Maki had prepared. The LLC structure is solid, Maki assured me. Eliza won't know you're involved until you choose to reveal it. I signed where indicated, then handed over the cashier's check I'd brought, my safety net, about to become my revenge. One more thing, Jake said as I stood to leave. Once we make the offer, things will move fast. Are you ready for what comes next? I thought about my bakery, about Neil's weakness, about years of Eliza's subtle manipulation and not so subtle control. I've spent 8 years being the perfect daughter-in-law, I said. I'm ready to be something else entirely. Walking to my car, I got another text from Neil. Mum's already talking about rebranding the bakery. Please try to be supportive on Sunday. I typed back a simple, "Of course, honey," and smiled. Sunday dinner was going to be interesting indeed. The offer's been accepted, Jake announced over speakerphone. I gripped my cell phone tighter, ducking into the bakery's walk-in freezer for privacy. Eliza didn't even counter. She's desperate to sell. How long until closing? 2 weeks, max. Maki's expediting everything. I ended the call as Danielle poked her head in. Boss, the corporate guy is here again. Says he needs to discuss the rebranding strategy. I stepped out to find a sleek-suited man waiting, laptop in hand. Eliza's minion, sent to destroy everything that made my bakery special. Mrs. Holland asked me to review these changes with you, he said, pulling up a presentation. We're thinking Holland's Fine Pastries for the new name. I bit my tongue, nodding along as he detailed their plans to replace my handwritten menu boards with digital displays and my vintage furniture with modern chrome and glass. And of course, he continued, we'll need to standardize the recipes. No more daily specials or custom orders. Everything needs to be consistent for potential franchising. My phone buzzed, a text from Sophia. Papers are ready. Need your signature ASAP. I have an appointment, I said, standing abruptly. We'll have to finish this later. But Mrs. Holland specifically requested. I said later. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, pausing only to whisper to Danielle, don't let him change anything while I'm gone. At Maki's office, I found both brothers waiting with a stack of documents. Once you sign these, Maki explained, the house will belong to your LLC. Eliza won't know until the closing documents are filed. And that's legal. Completely. Buyers have no obligation to reveal their identity until closing. By then, it'll be too late for her to back out. I signed everywhere they indicated, my hand steady despite my racing heart. There's something else, Jake said, looking uncomfortable. Eliza called this morning. She wants to accelerate the closing, says she has another property she's interested in. The bakery's money, I realized. She's planning to use it to buy something else before anyone realizes she's in trouble. Back at the bakery, I found Neil waiting. His face was tight with tension. Mum's wondering why you missed the meeting with the corporate team, he said, following me into my office. She says you're being difficult. Difficult? I laughed harshly. Like how she's being difficult about completely destroying everything I've built. She's trying to help. Stop saying that. I slammed my hand on the desk. When are you going to see what she's really doing? And what exactly is she doing, Tessa? His voice rose to match mine. Because from where I'm standing, you're the one acting strange. Secret phone calls, disappearing in the middle of the day. You want to talk about strange? I pulled out the corporate redesign plans. Your mother wants to erase every trace of me from this place. 8 years of my life, gone because she says so, and you're letting her do it. Neil's face softened. It's just business, babe. Change isn't always bad. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an email from Jake. Urgent. Eliza's realtor requesting closing date move up to next week. I have to go, I said, grabbing my keys. Again? Neil's expression hardened. What's going on, Tessa? Nothing you need to worry about. I paused at the door, just like I apparently don't need to worry about my bakery anymore. I spent the rest of the afternoon with Miki and Jake, rushing through paperwork and arranging finances. By evening, everything was set for closing in 5 days. Returning to the bakery after hours, I found Danielle still there, removing the corporate guy's sample displays. He tried to change everything while you were gone, she said. I told him all changes needed your approval first. Thank you. I helped her take down the last digital menu board. Things are going to get complicated soon. You might want to start looking for another job. No way. She crossed her arms. I'm staying right here. Someone needs to help you fight the evil empire. My phone lit up with a text from Neil. Mom wants us over for dinner tomorrow. Says we need to discuss your attitude about the changes. Speaking of the evil empire, I showed Danielle the message. Looks like tomorrow's the dress rehearsal for Sunday's main event. Are you scared? I thought about the house closing documents hidden in my bag, about Eliza's smug certainty that she'd won, about Neil's blind loyalty to his mother. No, I replied, surprising myself with how true it was. I'm ready. Danielle squeezed my arm. Give her hell, boss. I smiled, thinking of the storm about to break. Oh, I plan to. I really plan to. Congratulations, Meki said, sliding the final paperwork across his desk. You're officially a homeowner. Again. I stared at the documents, my hands trembling slightly as I traced Eliza's signature. She'd signed them this morning, still unaware of who really bought her beloved mansion. When will she find out? The deed records tomorrow. He leaned back in his chair. By law, she has 3 days to vacate once she receives the official notice. My phone buzzed, Neil calling for the 3rd time today. I sent it to voicemail. He's been trying to reach me since last night's dinner, I explained. It didn't go well. The previous evening had been a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Eliza had spent the entire meal detailing her plans for my bakery, while I sat there, smiling and nodding, knowing her world was about to implode. The contractors start Monday, she'd announced over dessert. We'll need to close for 2 weeks for renovations. 2 weeks? I'd asked, keeping my voice neutral. What about our standing orders? Oh dear, she'd patted my hand condescendingly. Those small-time customers won't matter once we're properly positioned in the market. Those small-time customers paid for everything in that bakery, I'd snapped, finally losing my cool. Every tile, every oven, every recipe. Tessa, Neil had cut in sharply. Mom knows what she's doing. The rest of the evening had devolved from there. Now, sitting in Make's office, I checked my messages. 3 from Neil, 1 from George. What did you say to Mum? She's been making calls all morning about some emergency meeting with her financial advisor. Looks like she's starting to feel the pressure, Makey observed. Are you sure you want to wait until Sunday to tell them? Sunday dinner is her thing, I said. Her power play. It's fitting that's where it ends. Back at the bakery, I found Neil waiting in my office. Where have you been? He demanded. Mom's been trying to reach you about the renovation schedule. I had appointments. More secret meetings. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. What's happening to you, Tess? Ever since you signed over the bakery. You mean ever since you and your mother forced me to sign over my life's work? That's not fair. Mum is investing a lot of money. Is she? I interrupted, thinking of her desperate rush to close the house sale. Are you sure about that? He faltered slightly. What do you mean? Before I could respond, Danielle knocked on the door. Sorry to interrupt, but Mrs. Holland is here, again. Eliza swept in, looking more frazzled than I'd ever seen her. Tessa dear, we need to push up the renovation timeline. The contractors can start tomorrow. Tomorrow? Neil looked confused. Mum, you said Monday. Plans change, she snapped, then quickly composed herself. It's better for everyone this way. Everyone meaning you? I asked sweetly. Her eyes narrowed. I don't like your tone. And I don't like what you're doing to my bakery, but here we are. It's not your bakery anymore, she reminded me, voice sharp. You signed it over, remember? Oh, I remember. I smiled, thinking of the house deed sitting in my bag. Speaking of signatures, how's the house sale going? She paled slightly. That's none of your concern. Mum? Neil looked between us. What house sale? Nothing, darling. She grabbed her purse. Just some real estate matters. Now, about tomorrow. No, I said firmly. Excuse me. No renovations tomorrow. No renovations next week. Nothing changes until after Sunday dinner. You don't have the authority. Sunday, I repeated. Consider it my last request as the former owner. She stared at me for a long moment, calculation visible behind her eyes. Finally, she nodded stiffly. Fine. Sunday. But after that, things will change around here. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and dear, do try to bring something other than those common chocolate chip cookies this time. We're attempting to elevate standards, after all. After she left, Neil turned to me. What was that about the house? You should ask your mother, I suggested, though I doubt she'll tell you the truth. Tessa, I have work to do, I cut him off. Apparently, I only have a few days left to make my common cookies. That evening, as I was closing up, my phone lit up with a text from Jake. Deed recorded. Notice will be delivered tomorrow morning. I looked around my bakery, my beautiful, warm, successful bakery that Eliza was so desperate to change, and felt a fierce satisfaction. Game on, Eliza, I whispered to the empty room. Game on. The doorbell chimed as George burst into the bakery, his face flushed with urgency. Have you seen Mum today? I looked up from the wedding cake I was decorating. No, why? She's losing it, like, completely losing it. He slumped onto a stool at the counter. Some courier delivered papers this morning, and she's been locked in her study making phone calls ever since. How terrible, I said, carefully piping another rose. Any idea what the papers were about? No, but she keeps yelling about lawyers and impossible deadlines. He grabbed a muffin from the display case. Dad says she's been trying to reach her financial advisor all day. Danielle caught my eye from across the room, trying to hide her smile. She was the only employee I'd trusted with the full story. I'm sure she'll sort it out, I said, adding the final touches to the cake. Your mother always does. Yeah, but... George lowered his voice. I think it's about the house. And I heard her mention the bakery too. Something about needing to accelerate the timeline. My phone buzzed, a text from Makey. Eliza's lawyer called. They're trying to delay the eviction notice. Too late, I typed back. The weird thing is, George continued, oblivious to my texting, she keeps saying she needs to talk to you before Sunday dinner. Something about the renovation schedule? Does she now? I wiped my hands on my apron. Well, she knows where to find me. Right on cue, the bell chimed again. Eliza strode in, looking significantly less polished than usual. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and her designer blouse had a coffee stain. George, she snapped, what are you doing here? Just grabbing a snack, Mum. He held up his muffin. Everything okay? Fine. I need to speak with Tessa, alone. George glanced between us, then wisely retreated to a corner table with Danielle. We need to move up the renovations, Eliza said without preamble, starting tomorrow. We already discussed this, I replied, continuing to work on the cake. Nothing changes until after Sunday. This isn't a request, Tessa. The contractors are already scheduled. Then unschedule them. Her perfectly manicured hands gripped the counter. Listen to me very carefully. I own this bakery now. You will do as I say, or what? I met her gaze steadily. You'll fire me? Go ahead, but good luck running this place without my recipes, my suppliers, and my loyal customers. Mom, George called from his table. Maybe you should... Stay out of this, she snapped, then turned back to me. I've been patient with you, Tessa, but my patience has limits. Funny, I said. I was just thinking the same thing. Her phone rang, probably another lawyer, and she grabbed it frantically. This isn't over, she hissed before hurrying out. George approached the counter once she left. I've never seen her like this. People show their true colors when they're desperate, I said, starting to clean up my workspace. Desperate? He frowned. Mom's never desperate. She's always in control. Is she? I raised an eyebrow. Maybe you should ask her about the house sale. Later that evening, Neil came by as I was closing up. He looked troubled. George said you and Mom had another fight. Not a fight, I corrected, counting the register. Just a disagreement about timing. He also said something about the house. He leaned against the counter. What's going on, Tess? Mom's acting strange, you're being secretive. Have you ever wondered, I asked, closing the register drawer, why your mother suddenly needed my bakery so badly? She wants to help. No. I cut him off. She needs it. There's a difference. What are you talking about? Ask her about the house sale, Neil. Ask her why she's so desperate to start renovations before Sunday. His phone buzzed. Eliza, of course. He answered immediately. Yes, Mom. No, I'm with Tessa. What? But you said, Okay, I'll be right there. Let me guess, I said as he hung up. Emergency family meeting. She says it's important. He hesitated. Come with me. No thanks. I grabbed my purse. I'm saving my family time for Sunday dinner. Tessa, please. You should go, I said, gesturing to his still buzzing phone. Your mother's waiting. After he left, I checked my own messages. One from Meki. Everything's set for Sunday. No legal way for her to stop it. Another from Sophia. Are you sure you want to do it this way? It's not too late to change plans. I thought about Eliza's desperate visit today, about Neil's blind loyalty, about years of manipulation and control. I'm sure, I replied to both. Sunday dinner is happening exactly as planned. I looked around my bakery one last time before leaving. By this time next week, everything would be different. I just hoped I was ready for the fallout. Mrs. Holland demands an immediate meeting, the lawyer announced, striding into my bakery Saturday morning. She's prepared to offer you a generous severance package. I continued boxing up cupcakes for a birthday party. Is she now? She's willing to buy out your remaining shares, he continued, placing a document folder on the counter. Full market value, plus 3 months' salary. Tell me, I said, tying a perfect bow on the box. Does Eliza know about the eviction notice yet? The lawyer's practiced poker face slipped for just a moment. I'm not at liberty to discuss other matters. No? I smiled. Then I'm not at liberty to discuss this one. See you at dinner tomorrow. He left the folder anyway, but I didn't bother opening it. Instead, I texted Miki. Eliza's trying to buy me out before tomorrow. Smart move on her part, he replied. Too bad it's too late. The bell chimed again. This time it was George, looking even more frazzled than yesterday. Mum's selling the house, he blurted out. She just told us. Says it's a strategic downsizing or something. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Did she mention who bought it? Some investment company. But that's not the weird part. He leaned in close. She's insisting we all come to dinner tomorrow. Like mandatory attendance. Dad, me, Neil, everyone. Can't miss the weekly tradition, I said, starting another batch of cupcakes. Tessa! He grabbed my arm. What's really going on? First the bakery, now the house. Something's not right. Before I could answer, Neil walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept. We need to talk, he said. I'll just... George backed away. Yeah, see you both tomorrow. After he left, Neil slumped onto a stool. Why didn't you tell me about Mom's offer? You mean the one her lawyer brought 20 minutes ago? She's trying to make this right, Tess. I slammed down my piping bag. Make it right? She forced me to sign over my business, is trying to destroy everything I've built, and now thinks she can buy my silence with 3 months' salary. Silence about what? He ran his hands through his hair. Everyone's acting crazy. Mom's having secret meetings. You're being cryptic about the house sale. Have you asked her about that? I interrupted. About why she's really selling? She says it's just business, and you believe her. like you believed her about the bakery. His phone buzzed. Eliza again, of course. He ignored it this time. What am I supposed to believe, Tessa? My wife's keeping secrets. My mother's falling apart. Your mother, I cut in, is reaping what she sowed. And tomorrow at dinner, everyone's going to see exactly who she really is. What's that supposed to mean? Another buzz, this time my phone. Jake had sent a photo of the final eviction notice, ready for tomorrow. You should go, I said, turning back to my cupcakes. Your mother probably needs you. Tessa, please. Tomorrow, Neil. All your questions will be answered tomorrow. After he left, Danielle emerged from the back room. That was intense. Just wait until tomorrow. I checked my phone again. A message from Sophia asking if I needed moral support at dinner. Yes, I typed back. But not at dinner. After. The rest of the day passed in a blur of baking and preparations. I stayed late, making sure everything was perfect for Sunday's orders. As I was closing up, George texted again. Mum's called every lawyer in town. What did you do? Nothing she didn't deserve, I replied. That night, I lay awake in bed, Neil sleeping restlessly beside me. My phone lit up with a final message from Makey. Everything's set for tomorrow, last chance to back out. I thought about the first time I'd met Eliza, how she'd looked at my small bakery with barely concealed disdain, how she'd spent years trying to control every aspect of my life, using Neil as her puppet, how she'd finally shown her true colors when she saw an opportunity to take what I'd built. No backing out, I replied. See you tomorrow. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear. I got up early, baking one last batch of my common chocolate chip cookies, the ones Eliza always complained about. Neil watched me from the doorway. Mum says we need to be there by 5, he said quietly. I know. I placed the cookies carefully in a box. Wouldn't want to be late for the last Holland family dinner. What does that mean? I closed the box, tied it with a perfect bow, and grabbed my purse, making sure the house documents were inside. It means, I said, heading for the door, that after tonight nothing will ever be the same. The look of confusion and worry on his face almost made me feel sorry for what was about to happen. Almost. Eliza's dining room was suffocating with tension. George kept checking his phone under the table. Neil wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, and Eliza's hands shook slightly as she served the roast beef. Lovely dinner, Mom, George said, breaking the silence. Though I'm surprised you cooked, with everything going on. Everything's fine, she snapped, then forced a smile. Tessa, dear, I assume you've had time to review the offer my lawyer brought. Oh, yes. I took a bite of potato. Very generous. Almost as generous as the offer you got on the house. Her fork clattered against her plate. Neil's father looked up, confused. The house sale? I thought that wasn't public yet. It's not, Eliza said quickly. Just a private transaction, nothing to discuss. Really? I pulled out my phone, checking the time. Because I heard the new owners taking possession very soon. The doorbell rang, making Eliza jump. She glanced at the clock. 6 p.m. exactly. I'll get it, she said, standing quickly. No need. I smiled. They're here for me. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. George went to answer it, returning with a courier holding official-looking documents. Delivery for Mrs. Holland, he announced. Which one? I asked sweetly. Eliza snatched the envelope, her face draining of colour as she read. This can't be right. What is it, Mom? Neil asked. It's... She looked at me, realization dawning. You're the buyer. Buyer? George grabbed the papers. Holy shit, Tessa bought the house? That's impossible, Eliza sputtered. The purchase was made by Summit Valley LLC. My LLC, I confirmed, taking another bite of potato. Formed specifically for this purpose. The deed was recorded Friday. Neil stood up so fast his chair fell backward. What's going on? Your wife, Eliza spat, has just revealed herself as the anonymous buyer of our family home. This is manipulation, I laughed out loud. Manipulation? That's rich coming from you. Tell them, Eliza. Tell them why you really needed my bakery. I don't know what you're talking about. The refinancing fell through, didn't it? I continued. The market crashed, the house lost value, and suddenly you needed a new source of income. Enter my profitable bakery. Mom? George was reading the papers. This is an eviction notice. 3 days to vacate. It's not legal, Eliza declared. I'll fight this. With what money? I stood up, pulling more documents from my purse. Your accounts are overdrawn, your credit's maxed out, and now you've lost both the house and your chance to steal my bakery's profits. Neil grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. These bank statements. Mom, is this true? Of course not. She's trying to destroy our family. No, I cut in. I'm stopping you from destroying anything else. The bakery deal is void, signed under duress, and with fraudulent intentions. My lawyer's already filed the paperwork. You can't prove. Actually, I can. George told me about the refinancing weeks ago. That's what started all this, isn't it? You needed my bakery's assets to secure a new loan. The room fell silent. Neil looked between his mother and me, his world visibly crumbling. 3 days, I said, standing up. That's how long you have to move out. Don't worry about the bakery. I'll handle the contractors you scheduled. You vindictive little... Careful, I warned. The new owner of this house might decide to shorten that timeline. George let out a low whistle. Damn, sis. Remind me never to cross you. Tessa, Neil finally spoke, his voice hollow. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? I asked. Over her? He had no answer. This isn't over, Eliza threatened, but her voice trembled. Actually, it is. I picked up my purse. Oh, and those cookies you always complained about. They won first place at the state fair last month. Just thought you should know. I headed for the door, pausing in the doorway. George, Neil, you might want to help your mother pack. 3 days isn't very long to move out of a house this size. You can't just leave, Eliza called after me. Neil, tell her. Tell her what, Mom? Neil's voice was tired. That you lied, that you tried to steal her business to cover your debts. I left them there, stepping out into the cool evening air. My phone buzzed, Sophia asking how it went. Done, I typed. Meet me at the bakery. I could use a friend and some fresh cookies. As I drove away, I caught a last glimpse of the house in my rearview mirror. Eliza's perfect mansion, now mine. The ultimate karma for 8 years of manipulation and control. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. My marriage, the bakery's future, the fallout from tonight. But for now, I had won, and that was enough. She's really gone, George said, watching the moving truck pull away from his childhood home. I still can't believe you pulled this off. I handed him a coffee from my bakery. Neither can I sometimes. We sat on the front steps, the morning sun warming the brick beneath us. The last 3 days had been chaos, Eliza's rage, Neil's silence, lawyers' calls. But now, finally, it was done. Neil's looking for you, George mentioned, sipping his coffee. He's been at the bakery every morning this week. I know. Danielle's been turning him away. He's different now. Since Sunday, it's like he's waking up from a long sleep. My phone buzzed, Sophia sending me property listings. I'd decided to sell the mansion, but not before using it for something special. Did you see the flyer? I asked George. He pulled it from his pocket, grinning. Community cooking classes for underprivileged kids. In Mum's precious gourmet kitchen. That's just evil. The first class starts next week. Your mother's marble countertops are about to meet 20 enthusiastic third graders learning to make pizza. Speaking of the bakery, George hesitated. Mum's been telling people you forced her out of a legitimate business deal. Let her talk. The truth has a way of coming out. Right on cue, my phone lit up with a news alert. Local businesswoman exposes financial fraud scheme. Mecky's contacts at the paper had come through. Well, George stood up, brushing off his jeans. I should go. Mum's expecting me to help her settle into her new apartment. How's she handling downsizing? Let's just say her new neighbors aren't impressed by her stories about her former mansion. After he left, I walked through the house one last time. The room still echoed with Sunday's confrontation, with Neil's final words to his mother. How could you do this to her? To us? The front door opened behind me. I knew who it was without turning around. You haven't been home in 3 days, Neil said quietly. I needed time to think. And now, I turned to face him. He looked different, older somehow, but also lighter, like he'd set down a heavy burden. Now I need to know, I said. If she hadn't gotten caught, if she'd succeeded in taking the bakery, would you have ever stood up to her? I don't know, he admitted. That's what scares me the most. I've spent my whole life making excuses for her, believing her lies. And now? Now I want to make things right. With you, with the bakery, with everything. He stepped closer. But first, I need to know something too. Did you do all this just for revenge? No. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden, where Eliza had hosted countless perfect family dinners. I did it because someone had to stop her, because sometimes the only way to deal with a bully is to take away their power. The cooking classes, he said. That was a nice touch. The house will be sold eventually, but first it's going to help some people. Real people, not just Eliza's social climbers. And us? His voice cracked slightly. Is there still an us? I turned back to him. That depends. Who are you without her influence? Because that's the man I need to get to know. I'd like to find out too. He pulled something from his pocket, a key. I had the bakery locks changed back. It's yours again, legally and completely. Mom signed the reversal papers this morning. The weight of the key felt right in my hand, like coming home. I'm not moving back yet, I told him. I need time. We need time. I know, but maybe we could start with coffee, at the bakery. My phone buzzed again, Danielle sending a photo of the grand reopening banner she'd hung in the window. Coffee sounds good, I said. But first, there's something I need to do. I pulled out my own set of keys and handed them to Neil. The house is yours if you want it. Not to live in, but to help run the community programs. Something good should come from all this. He stared at the keys, then at me. You're giving it up, just like that. I never wanted the house. I just needed to show her she couldn't take what was mine. I smiled. Besides, I already have a home. It's got ovens instead of marble countertops, and it smells like cookies instead of expensive perfume. Neil pocketed the keys, understanding in his eyes. Coffee tomorrow, then. Around 9. Make it 10, I said. The morning rush keeps me busy. You remember all those small-time customers your mother was so worried about? He laughed. A real laugh, maybe his first in years. 10 it is. I took one last look around Eliza's perfect house, then walked out without looking back. Tomorrow would bring fresh bread, hot coffee, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to build something new from the ashes of what had burned. But first, I had some cookies to bake.